Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm recording on October 1st. So happy new month. And we're going to be talking about the movement of the Israelis into Lebanon. There was a ground movement last night. A lot of action was going on last night with the news media, especially with Al Jazeera. And then we have the East Port strike in the United States. So I might be going back and forth depending on what is playing in the business on the business channels, especially with the port. If the port strike is long, all right, it's estimated that around 3.8 to $4 billion or more per day, $1 billion per day is lost. And if it's goes more than a week, you're going to start seeing elevated prices and shortages of certain goods that you would get at the store. All right. It's projected that this strike might last 2 or 3 weeks. If it gets to 3 weeks, some of the talking heads think that the federal government will go in and stop the strike. The federal government has the power to do that for this particular situation. But Biden said that he was not going to intervene because he believes in collective bargaining. Well, 2 weeks gets us into mid-October. 3 or 4 weeks, that's right up to election. So this might be a potential October surprise. Maybe not. We'll see. But it's probably, if it lasts longer than a week or two, especially 2 weeks, that you're going to see elevated prices at the store, and you're going to find some foodstuffs, and some other items that you may purchase at the retail level that aren't going to be available or will be in short supply. So just keep that in mind. So I want to go to Bloomberg and talk and listen to what's going on with dock workers in strike.
I think we're at a point in the cycle we're going to find out if rate cuts stop the labor market from weakening. And so the Fed certainly cut 50 basis points because they're concerned about the labor market. And it's kind of ironic that soft landing hopes have increased when the labor market is actually weakening more. Typically, the labor market is the last to go, and that's where the risks are right now. I suppose if you think about that against an economy that's wobbling just a bit, has the port strikes that maybe are out there, plus investors that are highly optimistic in stocks and elevated valuations, we think there's just a bit of caution that is needed from investors in the future.
So, Brent, you guys have been, I think, on the more cautious side of late. We do have a Fed that is cutting rates here. To the extent you still need to be in this market, where do you feel most comfortable? Maybe given some of the valuation concerns.
All right. So now they switched to the Fed. That's another thing that we need to think about. The Federal Reserve is lowering rates, which would be stimulatory. Now, if you have goods and services declining because of strike, and you're inflating the economy, you might actually increase the inflation of the short supply of goods and services. So there may be a dynamic here, short-lived, but maybe a dynamic here that you're going to see elevated prices at your stores. We'll see. But if they go back to the dock workers, then we'll play. Daggett, I believe, is the one that's running the strike. All right, now before we go to Fox and talk about what was going on in Israel, because we're going to be going back and forth between economics and the Israeli war with Hezbollah. Before we go to Fox about that, please make sure you subscribe to all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube. I have Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Please make sure you subscribe, all right? Recently, I received a strike on one of my smaller channels on YouTube about Taiwan, the Taiwan Strait. That it's really important to pay attention to that video, all right? It's episode 72, Gen Zero, episode 72. Talks about Mayor Adams, and then I talk about what was going on with the Taiwan Strait. And what's interesting here, and I'll just do a summation, but please watch episode 72 on Rumble, Bitchute, and Brighteon. On September 25th, in Asia time zone, at 6 a.m., which would have been September 24th, 6 p.m. New York time, Japan had one of their naval ships go through the Taiwan Strait with, I believe it was South Korea and Australia, maybe even Germany. I'm not sure about that, but there was a series of ships that went through the Taiwan Strait and upset the Chinese. This happened over a 10-year, not a 10-year, a 10-hour time frame. So it starts at 6 a.m. and goes on. So this is happening on September 24th, U.S. time, New York. Okay. Now, why is this important? I stated a few months ago that August 24th, 2024 and September 24th, 2024 are important inflection points. August 24 was when airstrikes were taking place by Israel onto Lebanon to start striking Hezbollah. All right. There was an important moment during that time period. There was an inflection point that led to the pagers and that led to all these other things that were starting. That was an important inflection point of August 24th, 2024. Why was that? How did I come up with that date? You take 322 days from October 7th, 2023, you get to August 24th, 2024. So with that, that was an inflection point date. Then I said that I had this feeling, just a strange feeling, that September 24th, 2024 was going to be another inflection point, but I wasn't sure why. But I had some different feelings about it. The feelings that I had were blue, the color blue, kind of like a light color blue, UN, radiological, the feeling of radiation or radiological. I had the feeling of New York and 9/11. All right, and I didn't understand at that moment in time. For those few months, I didn't understand what this meant. Okay, and then August 24th happens, and like in the news, it didn't show up, and I was like, I don't know what was it. And then I was wondering, maybe it was the General Assembly speeches by King Abdullah, where he had kind of a lot of rhetoric against Israel, because of the Palestinian conflict. Now you got to remember, King Abdullah from Jordan doesn't want to take the Palestinians in, and so he's more concerned about his own borders and his own country, and not so much really the plight of the Palestinians. And I was wondering, well, maybe that's it, and that there was going to be a larger conflict that involved also Jordan, which still is in the cards here. But but I wasn't sure. It kind of fit where it was blue, the UN. It was in New York. It was on August 24th, but it didn't have that radiological feel. But I was like stretching and thinking, well, maybe it's tied to Iran, and there's radiological development. There's nuclear development in Iran. Maybe that's it. So, I just kind of like said, maybe that's it. And I was basically getting ready to go to bed. It's near the end of the day. It's late at night. It's like 11:30, 12 o'clock at night on August 24th, 2024. So it's, right before midnight. And I get a news announcement that there was an event that took place in Asia. All right. On September 25th, their time. All right. Which is our time. And it took place September 24th at 6 p.m. New York time. So I missed it. It wasn't in the US news. it was in Asian news. Okay, so the event that I was sensing for September 24, 2024 is the Japanese and the other countries moving through the Taiwan Strait at 6 a.m. September 25th, 2024, which was September 24th, 2024 at 6 p.m. New York time. All right, it wasn't in the mainstream media. Now, in U.S. Okay, that there's an important feature here. We find out after this incursion in the Taiwan Strait, because that's freedom of navigation, but China thinks that they own it. So, you know, they get all hissy fit when people go through it. Japan, that was a historical moment when Japan did it. Okay, so they did. It upsets the Chinese. The Chinese decide to launch tests for ICBMs and warn the United States that they were going to do the test and not to do a counterstrike. This is all happening within a 24-hour period in Asia. We hear about the ICBM launch test. We don't hear too much about Japan going through the Taiwan Strait. That was, it wasn't in mainstream news. A couple days later, you start hearing a lot about China's sub that was sunk, nuclear sub that was sunk in May or June of this year. There was at their shipyard and it sunk. So there was things that were happening that were tied to my sense. Okay, you had September 2024, which was New York time, because I kept on thinking New York. All right, it happened during the UN assembly. Blue is the water. Radiological are two things. Japan, obviously, because of Fukushima and Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So there's a nation of radiation, right? But also the nuclear sub that was sunk. But the world didn't know about it unless you were, a person that's really keen on these events or have special intelligence information, military intelligence information. No one knew about the sub that sunk in May or June, for sure, because the United States had satellites to see how they were actually trying to get the sub out of the shipyard. All right. So put it all together here. Blue is water. Japan is the radiological nation that's tied to this nuclear sub sinking. It's a nuclear sub that's sunk from China in the shipyard in May and June, but no one knew about it, or at least the average person didn't know about it. Okay. This event of the ships moving through the Taiwan Strait pissed off the Chinese, and the operation started on September 24th, 2024 at 6 p.m. New York time, which is 6 a.m. the next day, September 25th, in Asia time. So I was right about the date, because I kept on thinking New York, New York. The tie to 9/11, all right? When I was in South Korea, I was working on an automotive project for Hyundai, for the Santa Fe. So I was working on a team where we were developing a front-end module, the front end of the Santa Fe SUV, back in 2001. 9/11 happens, all right? Didn't know 9/11 happens because I went to bed, all right? Wake up early, take a shower, turn on CNN. It's September 12th in South Korea, 6 a.m. I turned on CNN in New York time. It's September 11th at 6 p.m. And they had, if you remember, they had cadaver dogs going down there. They were searching for bodies. Everything was dark, and they had, lights on, and the firefighters were, whoever was left was trying to do recovery. So everyone remembers that time period. So that's the first vision of 9/11 that I had on CNN when I wake up in South Korea. All right, that's happening at 6 a.m. Asia time on September 12th, which is it's September 11th at 6 p.m. in New York. All right, so this 9/11 feel that I had is tied to this 6 flip, 6 a.m., 6 p.m. But the day, because of the time zone difference, it's a day switch. So it's not just a 6 a.m., 6 p.m. flip, but it's also a day flip because of it being in Asia. Okay, which is exactly what happened for me for September 11th in 2001 in South Korea. Right? I didn't know about 9/11 until 9:12 a.m. in Asia, which is 9/11 6 p.m. in New York. So I was pretty, it's hard when these things happen. This sort of thing has happened all my life. All right, where I get a sense and something happens. I don't like it. It's like a curse. All right, it's very hard to fully understand it until certain data points start to fall in, and then it's like, oh, okay. But what happens is that once you can lock in on the event, the next step. So the next step. So I'm not wrong about September. I'm not wrong about September 24th. It was New York time, and the event is that Taiwanese strait with the ships moving through at 6 a.m. September 25th, which is New York time, the 24th. Okay. That event will set in motion another big event that takes place 34 weeks from now, or 34 weeks from September 24th. Okay. That is going to be that's going to be the week of May 20th, 2025. All right. So how this works for me, at least, once I can lock in on the event, I know immediately when the next point is. I don't know exactly what will happen. I just know what the next point is. Just like I knew September, I knew August 24th, 2024 was something that was important. When that happened, then I knew that the next really key date is September 24th. All right. And I told you how I got to August. It was just 332 days from October 7th. All right. So the next key, it doesn't mean that there aren't going to be key dates before, but another key point that I'm concerned about is the week of May 20th, 2025. Don't know what, but I do know it's that week. We'll see what happens. But sitting back and actually thinking this through, and it's amazing how accurate the feeling I had was. But as I was going through September 24th, I couldn't find it. Where was it? I was even struggling. I knew right away with August 24th, bam, when that launch happened, it was very easy to find. It was all over the news. But this Taiwan Strait thing was in Asian news, but it wasn't in the mainstream US news. We were too focused on Trump and Harris and all this stuff. All right. So I'm concerned. You should be concerned. The week of May 20th, 2025. Why? I have no idea. I don't sense a color. I don't sense radiation. I don't have any other thing other than the only sense that I have. It has something to do with the week of. All right. So with that said, please make sure you follow and watch episode 72. But that's the evolution of this process. Okay. All right. So my new focus is May 20th, 2025, because it's 34 weeks from September 24th. Now, is it tied to Asia? I think so. It doesn't necessarily have to be. it may be something that is emerging with Israel. All right. Or, maybe our involvement with the Middle East and Asia, maybe it's somehow tied together, but I don't know. My gut feeling is it's, these things that I've been sensing, it's been focused on the Asian theater, but we'll see. We'll see. But because August 24th and September 24th were tied together and they were two different events, one was the August 24th was a Middle Eastern event, while September 24th was a Asian event. Perhaps this 34-week worry that I have in May of 2025, they're tied together, but I don't know. That's just how it works. I just don't know. Right? So with that said, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and try out my different products that I have if you haven't already. You can purchase the products individually, or you can purchase them in anti-aging boxes that I've curated. The first box, the anti-aging box that I want to go over, is the beginner's box, the anti-aging beginner's box. You get the structural nano silver, 35 ppms. You just take a teaspoon of it a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle 20 seconds or so, swallow it. You'll neutralize pathogens, maintain the mucosal barrier, boost up your immune system. You get your choice of C60 in extra virgin olive oil, MCT coconut oil, or avocado oil in a 2 ounce. Take a teaspoon of it a day. It soaks up free radicals. This is very potent antioxidant. And you get vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 is important to absorb calcium. It's a gene expression cofactor, and it helps to get cells to go into apoptosis. So that's the beginner's box. And throughout the recording, I'll talk about the other products that I offer in anti-aging boxes. But you can buy these products individually too, if that's what you would prefer. It's up to you. But I think it's important to tell the audience that I do have these anti-aging boxes, that if you buy an anti-aging box, you do get a reduction in the cost of the goods that are in the box. So buying it in a bundle, an anti-aging box, does help. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. Now let's go to Fox News. We're going to talk about this widening war with trade.
Trey now. Trey, welcome.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for having me.
First off, where are you? Are you stateside or are you still over?
Right now I'm in the Middle East, and I'll leave it at that. We'll have more tomorrow, but we're in the field and sort of gathering information as it relates to this developing story. What looks like, according to reports, is going to be a ground invasion of Lebanon.
They have tunnels too. They're heavily tunneled, is like Gaza.
Yes, they do. And actually, back in 2019, my cameraman and I, David Gamliel, we went into these tunnels and we saw how big they are. And I've been in the tunnels underneath Gaza. The tunnels they have in Lebanon are actually larger. They are able to use more advanced equipment to dig them, and that's part of what the Israelis are trying to make sure that they don't get caught in ambushes that they saw in Gaza, but on a larger scale.
How much damage is done to that organization, Trey? I personally never thought something like this could happen. You can not only killing Nasrallah, but 30 higher ups, 30 leaders, as well as thousands injured in the pager walkie-talkie blasts.
I mean, it's remarkable. When you think back a year ago, this was the fear for the Israelis, that there would be a large ground operation into southern Lebanon and that they would face it.
It's not amazing. It was predicted, talking about prediction, the Ribby predicted this in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. Netanyahu met the Ribby in 1980s. And the Ribby told Netanyahu, do not pay attention to the international community, move forward and do not be fearful and do not have hubris. And you will expand the territory into Lebanon. The international community put pressure on Israel and they backtracked. And Netanyahu and the Knesset and the Israeli IDF didn't listen to the Ribby. And the Ribby warned them what would happen. And we are literally living in 2024 on the warnings that the Rebbe gave to the Jewish people and to Netanyahu in 1980s. Literally, I mean, think about the intelligence level to be able to project out decades. Now, you're seeing in real time that I have, and I'm not the only one that has this ability, but some people have the ability to take a few points and move it out maybe a year or maybe a few months or a few weeks. But to be able to be so accurate, not just in the short term, but also in on a decades level, that's pretty impressive. That's pretty impressive. What I think some of the stuff that I do is impressive, but what the Rebbe did was astonishing. All right, and he warned the world at large: do not be fearful, do not have hubris, or you're going to have a curse. And what Netanyahu is doing is he's taking that VHS tape and he's rewinding it, in his memory with the Rebbe, and he's basically doing the playbook of what the Rebbe told him to do. This is exactly what's happening. Is what the Rebbe told him to do in the 1980s. So it's not astonishing. It's just finally someone had some balls to tell the international community, no, we're going to get the job done. We're going to root out the cancer. And there's going to be less destruction and collateral damage now compared to in the future if we have to redo this, if we do it wrong. So get the job done now. That's what's happening. So it's not astonishing. It was warned decades ago. Not only what to do, but if you don't do it, what would happen? And exactly that happened. And we're living it in today. So what do you want to do? You want to do a ceasefire? You really want to do a ceasefire? Probably not. Why? Because there are multiple data points to show that it's a failure. Get the job done, and then overall regional peace will ensue. If Hezbollah has all this money to make these tunnels, why is Lebanon's economy such in the shithole? Oh, it's because they took the money, and instead of investing in the infrastructure and its people and its education and its jobs and investing in its economy, they decided to have a war effort against Israel and build tunnels and get rockets. That's what a failed appeasement, ceasefire without getting the job done manifests in that region. When you do a ceasefire without getting the job done, this is what happens. So when people say, "Oh, there's so many children, that are displaced and there's collateral damage," well, if the job was done decades ago, they wouldn't have this problem, and it would be less collateral damage because population densities are growing.
A lot of heavy fire and rocket fire at the same time that would overwhelm Israeli cities. The Israelis have minimized both of those threats by conducting these operations over the past several weeks, because when we talked before about the concept of war with Hezbollah and Lebanon, they were made out to be this organization that was almost unbeatable, that would overwhelm Israeli air defense, there'd be blackouts, we were told, across Israel, hundreds of civilians would die, and the Israelis hit them hard over the past year since they got involved in the war on October 8th. But just over the past weekend, I mean, killing Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Iran's largest proxy in the Middle East, taking out, according to reports, the vast majority of the rocket and missile launching capabilities above ground. And so it's very significant what the Israelis have done. Around 1,000 people, according to local health officials, have died in the process, and we should note that in the course of our reporting. But this is a significant development, and it is what the Americans fear, possibly the first step toward a broader regional conflict.
Yep.
True or false? They did not even inform the U.S. that they were going to take out Nasrallah with 80 tons of bombs until
There's going to be a larger conflict in the region, but the Rebbe also said, don't fear, there's going to be a blessing. Now, I'm just looking at this from an international affairs lens and, being data dependent, all right, as the Federal Reserve phrases. All the ceasefires in that region have been through expedience, political expedience, and didn't get the job done. Didn't solve the real problem. Don't be fearful, America. Get the job done. Knock out Iran and its nuclear capability. So the Iranian people, which are mostly secular, can flourish and have democracy. The theocracy of Iran needs to be absolutely destroyed. Now, if you're going to be fearful of it, America's going to be cursed. We're already seeing the curses happening. Look at the flood that just took place because of that Hurricane Helen. All right, and the floods that happened. Now, I'm not. Some of it was flood related. Some of it, I believe, was a dam that broke. But you have North Carolina all flooded. You have parts of Tennessee that are all flooded. You have farmers absolutely destroyed. You have, towns destroyed. You have infrastructure destroyed. And as an American, I hate to see that happen. And we need to come together to rebuild. All right. And unfortunately, Harris is MIA and Biden is MIA with helping these people. But in general, there's a curse that's coming on to America. There's plagues that are happening on America. And one of it may be financial. All right. Goods and services are going to increase, especially goods, are going to increase in price because of this strike. Now think about it. Think about the self-centeredness of this. Okay. You have the strikers, whatever their issue is with the collective bargaining, the strikers for the Eastern Port. The Eastern Port, because, they just got hit by a hurricane, all right? The Eastern Port strikers, the union, the dock workers, they're on strike now. And they want more pay. And they want, to make sure that their jobs aren't going to be obsolete because of automation and robots. All right? But you have millions of people affected by the hurricane, and I don't know, maybe 1 million. I don't know what the actual number is that have been directly affected by the flood. In the Tennessee Valley and up through North Carolina. I mean, they're huge devastation. That look biblical to me. There are things that are happening that are because our pacifism, and our inability to get things done in the Middle East, there's a curse coming down. There's plagues coming down. All right. And it's affecting us. All right. Now, there's also this self-centeredness, which is also a problem in America. All right. It's self-centeredness by the workers, the dock workers. You have people in need in North Carolina and in Tennessee because of these floods, and the ones that were hit by the hurricane, directly hit by the hurricane, and destruction that happens in its path. Instead of having a strike, maybe they could have said, you know what, we're going to postpone the strike, get goods and services into the country to try to stabilize this region that has been affected by the hurricane and the floods. That's being an American, not being a socialist where they're going to go, we're going on strike and we're going to hold the economy to the fire, because as we don't bring in goods and services, it's going to affect the economy by $4 billion a day. $4 billion a day. And oh, by the way, the things that you buy at the grocery store and at the mall is going to go up in price. Not like the inflation wasn't high enough. Thank you very much, dock worker. I don't have an issue with their collective bargaining, at least at this moment in time. What I have an issue at is that they're doing it when there are Americans in need. You got a gigantic section of the population in the United States, in Tennessee and in North Carolina and in Florida, that have been affected by this hurricane. And they don't need elevated prices for supplies. They don't need a shortage of their supplies because of dock workers not willing to do their job. So it's going to affect, all right, we're talking about the hurricane now with, on here. So I'm going to go right to Bloomberg.
Says Helene was a wind machine as well as rain producer and storm surge producer. Experts are saying this shows how a hotter planet translates for now and into the future of how more people are in harm's way. Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Radio.
The vice presidential debate will take place tonight between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz.
I don't really care about the vice president debate. All right, so, but the point here is that the dock workers should have postponed the strike. All right, instead of hurting people that are in need because they have been hit by this hurricane. So there's a self-centeredness by the dock workers that I find appalling. You know, but that's the world we live in, and there's another curse that's coming down on America. Not only were we not willing to help Israel and move the ball forward quicker because we were worried about all this political, you know, the political perception in the international community and all this stuff, and afraid to get things done. I mean, literally, Israel bombed Yemen and the Houthis because they were a military threat. The United States couldn't do it. Now, why? We are taxed a lot in the United States to have a military, and they can't get the job done. Where a little military like the IDF could get the job done, I think that there is a failure of leadership at the Pentagon, right? There's a lack of will in our executive branch. There's the problem. And because of that, we have the problems that we have in that region. If they allowed Israel to execute operations in Gaza quicker and not hold Israel back, things would have been faster. But the United States didn't want to do it. Same thing, they wanted to hold back Israel on going after Hezbollah. They wanted to hold back Israel from going after Iran. I'm starting to find that there is a common theme here, that holding back Israel in actually rooting out the cancer in the Middle East is kicking the can down the road and making things worse later. That's the trend. And because the United States is doing this, there are going to be things like what we just saw with these very weird flooding situation because of this hurricane that came in. It's a major disaster. But it's one of those things that could happen, but low probability, but high impact. It happens. The United States is getting cursed, all right? And we're seeing it emerge. There's an emergence of another curse that's starting to happen because of the dock workers and how it's going to affect the economy. And that's tied to the whole self-centeredness of the whole socialism platform. You know, now you may think I'm wrong, but I don't think so. I don't think I'm wrong. The United States is getting cursed right now because they're not willing to get the job done. And don't be fearful. Don't be hubris. Don't be fearful. Move forward. That's what the Ribby said. Move forward. Don't be fearful. Don't be hubris when you win. And there's going to be during this process, a blessing will come. And if you hold back, or if you're hubris, there's going to be a curse. And we're seeing the curse in the United States because we're holding back.
These are in the air.
Yeah, we can confirm that, and it's pretty remarkable, and it gives you a sense of the fact that there is quite a bit of trust between the Israelis and the Americans.
All right.
Also,
I mean, today is crazy because I can't even. Now there's an Iranian ballistic missile that's being prepared.
Dan, you're on the ground in Jerusalem. Give us a sense of what you perceive to be the reaction for these types of news stories to the average Israeli on the ground? How concerning are they?
Direct military attack from
Yeah,
Iran
they're actually
against
coming
Israel
down
will
from
carry
11
severe
borders,
consequences
from Jerusalem.
for Iran,
We were
U.S.
being
official
briefed
says.
by the IDF on their entry, a large-scale incursion into the Lebanese.
The Ribby said this was going to happen.
That the Home Front Command, the wing of the Israeli military, is responsible for securing civilians against attacks and natural disasters, and suddenly issued a nationwide.
Netanyahu has asked the population.
And some audio challenges. there.
Some audio challenges there. Ken, see what we can do to get Dan and Williams back. Our global technical director will work on that, which is what you get into the satellite technology.
We wouldn't have
to
this
get to
problem
the Lebanese.
if we
One
knocked
that I
out
think is so
Iran
interesting here is, of
in the
course,
Clinton's
the,
administration.
from the United States. Again, the headline here is simple: Iran preparing ballistic
missile attack against Israel. Yeah, that's going to really, end up really well. But the thing is, this wouldn't happen if the United States actually got the job done during the incursion in the Middle East after 9/11. Couldn't get it done. No, we couldn't do that. No. Hold back Israel in 2006. Couldn't do it right then either. I'm telling you, we keep on kicking the can down the road and it's going to get a hell of a lot worse. Now, they're preparing ballistic missiles. Just imagine if it was radiologic. What if they had nuclear capability? If they don't yet, at least we don't think they do. It changes the whole dynamic. This is why I keep on saying the theocracy, the theocratic regime in Iran has to be decapitated, and the nuclear capability has to be completely destroyed. And then you send in a lot of FDI money into the region to support the secular society in Iran, raise the bar for all citizens, and have a democracy in Iran. And stop and tell the CIA to stop fucking everything up.
Attacks, of course, but now widening the scope here, going into Lebanon. We've had some limited incursions into southern Lebanon. It seems like this is a leader that really wants to once and for all try to settle as many scores and set a new level in that part of the world. And it's not something he's getting necessarily full support from the U.S. Is he?
He is an increasingly isolated figure on the world stage. He was here in New York a couple of days ago to address the UN General Assembly. It was unclear if that speech was actually going to happen. It kept getting postponed as a result of what's been happening in the region. So after the attack, that infamous attack that we saw in pagers and other electronic devices in Lebanon, he remained in Israel, did make it to New York, and gave a kind of characteristically defiant speech. But he has widened the scope of this war dramatically since about a year ago. We're approaching the 1-year anniversary of October 7th, that horrendous attack. And this is now a front that he is really pursuing with great ardor.
David Gura, Mick Kruger over at CNN summarizes the mood that I wanted to hear from Dan Williams. We're sorry for that technical loss in Israel that happens when you're out in the middle of nowhere on the Lebanon border. Netanyahu writes, wave of euphoria over assassinations as his political fortunes turn around. What reporting, what summation have you seen of the new Netanyahu after the weekend's events?
Well, Hezbollah is a terrorist group as designated by the United States, and even in comments that we've got from Secretary of State Antony Blinken, there has been a recognition of the fact that Hassan Nasrallah was someone that no one had much affection for in the Western world. So Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is getting plaudits for the killing of the leader of Hezbollah, leader for many decades. You're right about his fortunes. I mean, he does not enjoy anything close to unanimous support among Israelis, and there have been a lot of downs and ups over the course of this war. But I think a lot of Israelis who have grown tired of the provocations of Hezbollah over these last many months and years were frankly glad to see Nasrallah done away with. And as this incursion has taken place overnight, see it as a sign of Israel kind of pushing back on a group that's been a real menace to it for many years, of course. And there are people, Dan Williams, I spoke with a little earlier today myself, notes that border is very thin and people live hundreds of feet from each other on either side. So there is ready conflict, if not.
The American military needs not to have trepidation, move forward and complete the mission, and don't have hubris after it's completed. And there will be a blessing with this nation. But if you fail, America is going to have a curse coming down. Trust me on this. Trust me on it. This is all happening right before Rosh Hashanah, where it is determined between the 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, what's going to happen in your life. Not just if you're going to live or die, but what is going to transpire in your life for that year. It's all happening. We're preparing for this big move. America, don't fuck up. America, don't fuck up. But there are so many pacifists in this country that aren't willing to get the job done. Don't be surprised that something bad happens to you when you don't get the job done.
Administration not having perhaps as much influence on the Israeli government as they thought they may have had initially.
No, it's been very tricky, and there's been a call from President Biden for a ceasefire now for many months. He made it as recently as yesterday when he was asked about the prospects of this incursion. It is what he wants to see. It's what his administration wants to see. And again, going back to the UN General Assembly, many countries are calling for it. And there has been widespread disagreement about it, back and forth with Israel and the Palestinians over these last many months. But I think that suffice to say, the U.S. and policymakers in the U.S. are unhappy with how their counsel is being taken by Israel. But going back to Tom's question just about the prosecution of this war, is expanded beyond one front, beyond Gaza now, and under Prime Minister Netanyahu and his war cabinet, they feel like
we're upset that Israel isn't listening to us. Because they used to do what we told them to do in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s. And, since October 7th, they were pretty much listening to what they were doing. But then Netanyahu had this idea that maybe he should take the advice that the Rebbe gave him in 1980s to stop fucking up. And now they're not listening to us and getting the job done. How dare them? Our Pentagon is a bunch of fucking fools.
In the region, David, do you think have a voice that either side is paying attention to? Is there somebody there, whether it's Saudi Arabia or someone that can step in here and try to de-escalate?
I think Saudi Arabia is certainly one of them. But at this moment, none jumps out to me. And, I was talking with Joanna Bitchute, our correspondent in Lebanon earlier today as well, and she talked about just the state of Lebanon today. And we think of Hezbollah as this militant group, which of course it is, but over these last few years has developed a large political footprint as well. So the elimination, the killing of the head of that group has opened up a vacuum even more. And she's risen.
A political movement that's not really on the side of the Lebanese people. Why? A big part of Lebanon is Christian. Yeah, that's going to go real well with Islamic terrorism.
Got here on a fractious October 1, a Tuesday as well. As David speaks, Paul, now we have oil up 3%,
Yeah,
up $2 and still lifting higher, $70.35. West Texas Intermediate. Brent crude out almost to $74, up $2.17. Gold up $33, hitting up near 27 under 26.92. The Dow negative 200.
Yeah, Tom, this is an escalation that I guess many people were maybe not too surprised about. You expected it, but again, the question is to where does it end? And I think to the extent that Iran enters into this, then that becomes an entirely new level. But again, Benjamin Netanyahu seems pretty aggressive in the policies and the actions in response to that October 7th clash, or incursion. So we'll have to see how this plays out. But again, another escalation.
Right.
The markets are reacting negatively too.
Ramzi Al-Rakabi now out with a Bloomberg story on this. It is a brief note. The U.S. says Iran preparing to attack Israel with ballistic missiles. The U.S. has indications that, and the key word here, imminently launch a ballistic missile attack against Israel. That, according to a senior White House
game on, baby.
Official, the U.S. is actively supporting preparations to defend Israel. against a possible attack. The warning comes after Israeli forces moved into southern Lebanon. Troops began what Israel said was a, quote, targeted ground raid shortly before midnight local time. We'll have much more on that. We thank Ramsey El-Rakabi in Washington for that quick summation of news, really by the moment. Please stay with Bloomberg News today on this and the many other stories of our fractious geo.
Things are ramping up. We're being tested. This is right before Rosh Hashanah. We make the right move. We do the right thing. We're not fearful, and we don't have hubris on the Israeli side or even on the U.S. side or its allied forces in this region. We will be blessed. If we make the mistake where we're fearful, we don't do it. We don't move forward. Or when we do complete the mission, we're hubris. We're going to be cursed. It's happening. It's happening. And I've been warning people. I've been warning this since October 7th that this fucking stuff was going to happen. But mark my words, this thing's going to Asia too. All right, I'm going to do a commercial while there's a break in the news in the market. But there is a big move in oil right now with Brent and with WTI. The equity market is going down. It's at 57. It's at 5,710 right now. It's down about 52 points on the S&P 500. All right. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right. You're going to need anti-aging protocol when the world goes nuclear. All right. With that, all that radiation causing all the damage to your DNA. Well, you know, maybe you should get an anti-aging box before Iran decides to launch the ballistic missile that they said they were going to do against Israel. All right, with that said, I have an anti-aging box that is the advanced box. All right, we talked about the beginner's box, but I also have the advanced box. Now, again, you can purchase all these products individually if you want, but it behooves you to actually buy an anti-aging box because it's cheaper, but it's up to you. Max 35, take a teaspoon of it a day. That's the structural nano silver liquid. You get the C60, your choice of extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, or avocado oil. Take a teaspoon of it a day. It's a strong antioxidant. You get vitamin D3 to get rid of those apoptosis, get rid of those cells that need to go into apoptosis. Vitamin C helps to boost up your immune system, and it's good for your skin. Probiotic, really important to improve your gut biome, improve your metabolism, and a great toothpaste, right? This whitens your teeth, freshens your breath, has no fluoride in it, has structural nanosilver, it'll neutralize pathogens, and it'll help to maintain a good gum line and reduce that inflammation. With good oral hygiene, you can reduce cardiovascular disease and valvular disease. Bad oral hygiene could increase cardiovascular disease and valvular disease. You don't want that. You don't want stenosis of your valves. You don't want calcification of your valves. You're going to have a problem when you do. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the advanced anti-aging box that I offer. Again, you can purchase the products individually if you would prefer to do that. All right, let's go back to Trey. Before we get interrupted by business things. Today is a unique day.
Ceasefire from President Biden and other top American officials are so real that they could actually get in the way of Israeli operations. And that's part of the reason that the Israelis are very careful about what and when they share information.
Use Tom Cotton, cut 4.
Over the last 4 years, they've given away tens of billions of dollars in sanctions relief. They've looked the other way as Iran violates sanctions. They continually put more pressure on Israel than they put on Iran's terrorist proxy. That's why Kamala Harris is the Ayatollah's handpicked candidate, and why the Ayatollahs are hacking into Donald Trump's campaign and trying to kill him.
So there's some stuff that you can't comment on because it's politics, but is that the perception that many Israelis have?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the Israelis have been living this conflict for the past year. It started on October 7th with the massacre that Hamas conducted against southern Israel. And now it has expanded to multi-front. I mean, there are rockets not just coming anymore from Gaza. I mean, much of that rocket fire has stopped. Now there's still rocket fire coming from Lebanon. Over the past week, there have been 2 ballistic missile attacks on Israel, and those are coming from the Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen. There are proxy groups in places like Iraq and Syria that are backed by Iran, these Shia militias that are still able to target Israel. And so it's a real seven-front war for the Israelis, and their focus is on continuing this conflict.
U.S. ISM manufacturing price index falls by most since May 2023. Now you get the port strike, it's going to raise prices. You have manufacturing index going down. You have these, so you're going to have inflation pressure. You're going to have a slowing down of the economy. And then you have pacifists in the country that say, oh, we don't want to get involved with Iran. Let's just give peace a chance. Curse is coming. Curse is coming. Don't think that you're, some sort of logical rationale for, liberalism is not going to be somehow perturbated by metaphysics. I'm pretty accurate. I think it's time for people to pay attention to what I have to say, and actually listen and actually do what I'm saying, because I'm really accurate. But, ballistic missiles are being armed in Iran. Thank you very much, Biden administration. Thank you very much, Obama administration.
Bombing out the Houthi rebels who have shut down the Red Sea and are shooting at us. It's the IDF that took the shot at Iran, who clearly are our #1 Middle Eastern enemy, and a lot of enemy to many. Give me an idea. People just think Nasrallah dies, the Middle East is upset. The Syrians are not upset that Nasrallah is dead. How many nations out there, Gulf Coast nations, didn't really get along with the Hezbollah leader?
Many. And when you look at the people who were celebrating as a result of this strike that killed Nasrallah, and also as deputy commander of Iran's IRGC, it's significant because Nasrallah was not just responsible for the deaths of Israelis and Americans, but also people across the region. I mean, Syrian rebels were celebrating. You saw in some cities in Syria they were giving out candy following this. And so, in a weird way, but in a true way, the Israelis have done the dirty work for some other countries who saw Nasrallah also as an enemy. And that's sort of an interesting complex about this entire story.
So let's talk about your story. October 7th, what were you doing prior to that? You chronicle in your book, you take impeccable notes along the way, not knowing this Titanic event would take place. What do you remember about that day?
On the morning of October 7th, I got a call from my producer at 7:03 in the morning, and ultimately decided after speaking with my boss, Greg Eaton, that we were heading to the south, our team here in Israel, to cover what was happening. And we didn't really know what was happening at that time. We knew that there were rockets being fired into southern central Israel, and so we did what we always do. We headed towards the Gaza border. And as we got closer and as the day went on and that morning went on, we started to realize this was not just a normal rocket attack. And so I write about that story in my new book, Black Saturday, that comes out tomorrow. And it's going to allow readers not to just get my story and what it was like for our team behind the scenes, but also the stories of police officers, of Israeli soldiers, of civilians, of hostages who were taken into Gaza and then later released as part of the November ceasefire agreement. I also
this is the morning for oil futures. All right. The moment that Iran said that they were going to hit Israel with a ballistic missile and they're arming, boom. Look at that. Boom. This is like normal trading. And then and then last night it started selling off, probably thinking that things are relatively stable in the Middle East. All right. Also, Saudis are increasing production of oil to maintain market share. And then all of a sudden, it starts to come back up and meet the close from the prior day. So that's just normal mean reversion. All right. But a little bit of volatility. All right. But you would think that short the market, right? Because there's pressure to go down, to about $66 a barrel. This is WTI. All right. And then all of a sudden, Iran, bam, This is what I'm talking about. The black swans, the low probability, high impact events. Do you understand what is starting to emerge here? Don't be a pacifist because you're going to get fucked. If you're a pacifist, you're going to get fucked. Trust me on this.
Hamas officials, I also speak with Palestinians today to give people a true understanding. There's someone who wants to know what it felt like to be in southern Israel on the morning of October 7th, or what it was like in the early days of the war between Israel and Hamas inside Gaza. This is the book. I mean, it has truly unprecedented access to what this was like in the early days of the conflict.
Trey Yingster, our guest, he's calling us from somewhere in the Middle East. Trey, now that you have such great contacts with Hamas, great contacts with Israel, great contacts with Hezbollah, and many others, can you give me your perspective? What surprised Hamas about that day, and what has surprised them about the response?
I think on that day, on October,
the Biden administration finally agreed to ban Peter Daszak and EcoHealth Alliance from receiving any
I
more
wonder
funding
why.
for gain-of-function research. You'll
Yeah.
recall
4 years later.
I think on that day, on October 7th, based on my reporting for this new book, I think they were most surprised by how far they got into Israel. I think they thought there would be a heavier Israeli response that morning. They were able to walk into dozens of areas of Israel and slaughter civilians in their homes. They overtook army bases along the border. And they did it with ease in many cases. And so I think they were surprised about how easy it was to attack Israel on that morning, how unprepared the Israelis were. And I think since then, in some ways, they've been surprised at the scale of the Israeli response. Though Israeli officials will say, well, what did you expect? But I dive into that in Black Saturday too, because this is a really complex story. And that's part of the reason that I thought it was important to speak with Palestinian civilians as well, because the Israeli response against Gaza has killed thousands of Hamas militants, but it's also killed thousands of civilians and displaced nearly the entire population of Gaza. And so I think that's been a very shocking thing for the Palestinian people. And as we look at the story moving forward, I don't think that even Hamas could have imagined on that day that this would have led to a year-long conflict that really has no end in sight. And that's the reality on the ground, Brian. There is no end in sight. And as we speak, we are in the back of an armored vehicle right now in northern Israel, reporting on the war that has erupted between Israel and Hezbollah as a result of that attack on October 7th.
And if you think if they would either one of those organizations, those terror organizations, like to roll back time and not do this, 8,000 rockets later, they lost their whole hierarchy, including their leader, and now the whole country's in flames, and now they might be looking at an invasion. Hamas had 28 battalions. I think they're down to 1.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, this was not something that helped Hamas. I mean, the majority of their leadership was also killed, like Hezbollah. And, from our mindset, when we think about this, I always ask the question, what's the reason? At the end of the day, why do this if you know you'll be destroyed? And I used to ask Hamas officials that when I would report inside Gaza before October 7th. And their answer is often just based on the concept of resistance, resisting the Israeli blockade on Gaza and what they call the occupation of the West Bank and of East Jerusalem. And, part of our role as journalists is to talk to them and try to understand why they do what they do. And I think a lot of people will find that interesting in the book, because you get perspective that I don't think any other journalist on the ground in the world today is reporting, and that is the access that we have, our team on the ground in the Middle East. I speak with not just Hamas officials, but also top Israeli officials. Israel's defense minister, Yoav Gallant, the man calling the shots today about the war with Lebanon and specifically with Hezbollah. I sit down with him exclusively multiple times and interview him about October 7th and the early days of the war. There's all this information that sort of takes the reader behind the scenes and all these questions that we had. Some of them get answered in this book.
By the way, this might be your reporting, but this is what we have. Senior U.S. officials tell Fox Israel will launch a limited ground incursion into South Lebanon. Incursion is imminent. Will be smaller in scale than the 2006 and last a shorter period of time. So, is that new to you?
I'm going to attribute what I know about that to that report that you just read. But I think when you and I talk tomorrow morning on Fox and Friends, we're going to have more information on that.
Okay. This was 8 hours ago.
Like the reality is, we can tell you based on our reporting from before that there are a lot of Israeli forces in northern Israel. They are preparing if the security
Okay, so
cabinet
what we're gonna
decides to
do
launch
is I'm gonna go to Al Jazeera because they're live.
Stereophonic is the best play. Best play. Best play. Best play.
All right. This is the doc. I know this is gonna be kind of,
The data is pretty interesting here because
Flux.
there are various reports as to how much automation helps, how much it costs.
This
Does
is the
it
doc
speed things
issue.
up? In some cases
doc
it does.
workers issue.
In other studies it haven't. But they're really at loggerheads on this because is the pace of technology advancing and the employers feel like, hey, it's something you can't hold back. But again, the unions, they don't want to lose jobs over this.
In the lead up to this strike, who are the dock workers union actually blaming for the dramatic rise in freight prices? Was it the ocean carriers?
It's 100% the ocean carriers, Jess. They've been using extremely strong language, calling them greedy, saying that they've been jacking up prices. And to be fair, throughout this strike, they have been, because it is not many companies that run the ocean carriers. It's only a few, so they do have the power to lift prices higher. Heading into the strike, they were lifting them some 20%, and it is something that people have to pay because they don't have a lot of other options. Their profits actually increase in periods like this. The dock workers, for their part, said that the administration agreed with them, that there were greediness on the ocean carriers. But this is how things work. If you are a business and all of a sudden you need to raise labor costs by 50 to 70%, like being proposed here, you would be in trouble. That is not the case because there are not a lot of companies. If they raise prices, they'll basically be passed on to the ocean carriers, which get passed on to the manufacturers, which gets passed on to the consumers. There's a lot of pricing power in this business. And again, that does allow the dock workers here to squarely point the finger at them.
Danny, I guess in terms of duration for the strike, is it perception days, maybe a week, not months?
Yeah, we are looking, at least for now, that channel checks by the team over at Bloomberg Intelligence seems to suggest that this will just be something that is days. And it is crucial, Paul, that it is just days. Just to give you an estimate, for every single day that we are on strike, the estimate is that will take 6 to 10 days to clear up. So if this does last, let's say, a month, it will take 6 months to 10 months to clear up. So there's a lot of pressure here to get this done sooner. And again, the two sides have moved off of their posts. They do seem to be getting closer together. So
if it's a protracted labor negotiation, you're going to have elevated prices. Now, God could have came in and said, you know what, things will be stabilized and I'm not going to let this strike happen. The hand of God, right? The invisible hand of Adam Smith. Right? Don't assume that your actions aren't related to this. The United States in general has been holding back Israel. And the United States is being cursed. I'm telling you, this whole flood thing, and the issues with the election and the issues with prices, we are being punished for thinking that typical international policy should be the playbook. Meanwhile, it was warned decades ago not to do that, not to use the normal playbook, because there was going to be a curse. But we decided that we know better, and that because we're afraid. We're a country that isn't a doer anymore. We're just a bunch of fraidy cats, right? And now we have these things emerging that are going to affect your pocketbook now.
Talk to us about what the impact could also be potentially on the West Coast when it comes to those ports as well, and what they're going to potentially do if they see a rise in a lot of the imports that are coming in through, and what that means, especially because the fourth quarter obviously is that buster quarter when it comes to the holiday spending, and when it comes to obviously when you have cargo coming in for a time like that. So if it is something that is a matter of just days instead of weeks, but especially when you think about what that means for US GDP, because consumer spending is the powerhouse and about more than 2/3 of what obviously pushes the global economy and exports, especially when it comes to the US economy.
It's interesting to note, just from a historical perspective, not far from where Danny is standing, is where intermodal transportation in the United States was first invented.
Oh, that's fascinating.
The container ships.
That's
and
right.
Now, fast forward to 2024 in this strike, the workers there who used to move things with nets and whatever, cargo, and now doing it with the intermodal transportation, they want to put a lid on further gains in terms of the productivity.
Yeah, just amazing. So it's a story that's going to be evolving over the next couple of days. Danny Burgers gave us great reporting right from the docks there. We appreciate that. Let's switch back to the global political issues in the Mideast that are definitely below markets. S&P 1.2%, NASDAQ off 1.7%.
S&P 500 went below
on the news that
5,700
tensions are rising in the Middle East there, now including perhaps Iran. Mark Champion joins us here, Bloomberg opinion columnist. Mark, give us the latest reporting. What are we hearing coming out of Israel, Iran, and the Middle East?
Right. Well, I mean, there is an awful lot going on. Essentially, overnight, the Israelis say they began a limited ground force action into southern Lebanon. They've told, we don't know exactly how far they'll go, but they've told civilians to leave beyond the Litani River, which is about 20 miles or so inside the border, and it is the demarcation line that was set by a UN resolution after the last Israeli incursion into Lebanon in 2006. So that's on the Israeli side. The US administration is saying that it has indications that Iran is beginning preparations for a ballistic missile strike on Israel. You may remember that in April, there was a large strike from Iran with around 300 different kinds of missiles, mainly cruise and drones. And so this would be in response to the killing of Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, last week by Israel. And Iran had promised a response, and this would be it. We don't know yet what the scale of that will be, how effective it will be. The April strike was extremely ineffective. Almost every single missile was shot down. But the U.S. has said it is concerned and that it's now preparing to intervene as it did in April to help shoot those down.
Have we heard from the Biden administration yet so far this morning?
Not formally, but
MIA.
there are reports, as I say, coming out from different officials, basically saying that they are concerned both about the incursion of Israel, not because they don't think it's correct. Officials have said that they're okay with Israel going in to take out Hezbollah infrastructure just on the other side of the border, but they are concerned that Israel has plans to go much further. Equally, we haven't heard anything official about the ballistic missile strike, but there are a lot of reporting saying that this is what they see happening.
Is there evidence that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is gaining confidence in his positions and his policies here? Because he's had some successes, certainly, over the last several days, particularly with the killing of the Hezbollah leader. What's the status of the Prime Minister and his support?
No, very much so. And in fact, there's been a real sea change. You may remember that after the attack by Hamas on Israel in last October, there was a huge drop in support for Netanyahu and for his Likud party, because basically the government was seen as sharing responsibility not for the attack, but for the fact that it was able to succeed. And so it was a huge blow to Netanyahu at the time. There were a lot of calls for his resignation, for him to take responsibility, etc. Now, all of that, opinion polls that suggest that that has been completely recovered, and that was even before the most. There's a poll that were before.
See what happens? What the Ribby said? The Ribby said, "Don't be fearful. Don't worry about the international community. Get the job done. Don't be hubris. Things will be okay. What you think is darkness will turn into light." You just saw it happen. 3 weeks ago, everyone was saying Israel wouldn't be able to do anything in Lebanon and that it would be a fiasco. It's still left to be determined, but it doesn't look like it's going in that direction. And then everyone was thinking that Netanyahu was going to be, some sort of Israeli pinata. It doesn't look like it's happening either. Maybe the Ribby was right. Oh, I think so. Oh, I think so. I'll tell you, don't be a pacifist in this case. In this case, this is something unique is happening. You're seeing you're seeing that region that there's a death that's happening in the region and a rebirth, and that rebirth is going to be a prosperity and peace. But it's going to be difficult as it's doing this switch.
The assassination of Nasrallah, which was very, popular in Israel. Doesn't matter which side of the political divide you are. It's a very polarized country, but there's agreement that Hezbollah is an existential threat, poses an existential threat to Israel. These would be extremely popular.
These dock workers want 61.5% raise increase. 61.5% raise increase. Crazy. This is what I'm talking about. This is the curse. This is the curse that's coming. You're going to be paying more at the grocery store. Mark my words.
Despite other people trying to appease.
When we're talking about an imminent launch here, what is the timetable?
We don't know exactly. The fact that the Americans would say at this point that they see it coming suggests that it will be fairly quick. There have been a number of other hits by Israel on figures from Hezbollah. There was also the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, the former head of Hamas, when he was in Tehran. Extremely embarrassing for the Iranians, and on each occasion they promised a response. It didn't really happen. They seem to have been really quite chastened by the almost complete success in shooting down several hundred of their missiles in April, and they've done little since. That's understanding that
what potentially could happen is a ballistic missile hits Tel Aviv. And that's where, remember I said there's curses and blessings that are happening on Israel because of this whole infighting between the conservative movement and the liberal movement. Tel Aviv is like New York. All right? Full liberals. There's a high probability that Tel Aviv gets hit. And that's the curse that comes on the liberal establishment for this appeasement and not getting the job done. Same thing. There's going to be a curse that happens in the financial sector. Well, where do you think the financial sector centroid is? It's New York City. I tell you, these liberals are there's a curse that's coming on these ultra liberals.
Yields pulling back your 10-year treasury off about 7 basis points, 3.71% on the 10-year. WTI crude oil up almost 3% here to $70 per barrel. Brent up about 2.7%. Gold higher, up 1% to $2,663. So we're seeing some definite movement in the market. Let's check in with Vince Signorello, Bloomberg macro strategist. Vince, the market seems to be reacting pretty clearly here to, again, just seems to be yet one more level of escalation in the Mideast.
Yeah, no, there's been major selling of risk assets across the board. We've seen gold go big, treasuries go big. Obviously, the equity market is getting tight. The trader just told me there's been some size put volume going through the S&P at around 5650. A hedge
5650. Interesting.
And just heard reports just a few minutes ago that the expectation is that strike would be within the next few hours.
And as you know, the last time the impact on the markets was a bit more minimal based on the response. And so does it really depend on just how forcefully Iran attacks Israel and what that would mean, obviously, for those commodity type prices and obviously risk assets across the board?
Yeah, very much so. And I think it's actually really probably going to hinge on what kind of retaliation the Israelis did. It was very checked and measured.
Israel needs to go all in. All in.
escalates it. We just saw
Non-stop, all in.
a report that Hezbollah launching some missiles from Lebanon as well. So if this is some sort of coordinated attack and actually causes some serious damage in Israel, which thankfully the last one did not, one would expect more of a response from Israel than the last time, and that could certainly weigh on risk assets. I really think it's going to be what the retaliation comes from Israel towards Iran and of course Hezbollah.
Vince, looking at the Bloomberg Dollar Index, up about 0.2% here. What are you seeing in the currency markets here?
Pretty much a big sell-off in emerging markets. Couple of reasons for that. The dock worker strike not going to help that situation either. But clearly, you just see, basically, the dollar goes bid, treasuries go bid in a haven flow such as this. It could be temporary. Again, it depends on what the situation looks like in Israel. Seeing some reports coming across now. Nothing we don't already know, to be honest.
Okay. So Vince, before this news broke, I mean, just give us a sense of how the market was kind of looking over the past couple of days here. What's the theme of this market outside of this, short-term geopolitical risk?
Sure. It was up until I think in the last 24 hours, very, very well bid based on the China stimulus. It started to trade off a little bit. I think that was a little frothy. We've got Golden Week in China for this week, so we're not going to see any indications from them as to see any follow through to the rally, the great rally they had last week. That remains to be seen if that will continue. I think what market participants look at from the stimulus in China is that it tends to be a very short-term thing. It lasts for a couple of months and then kind of fades. That's been the history of that monetary stimulus when it comes without a very, very strong fiscal response. So I think what we saw or what we are seeing this morning before this news was the profit taking building into that. Going to be interesting, obviously, to see what the response is that follows if this attack actually happens.
All right, Vince, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. As always, Vince Signorella, market strategist for Bloomberg News, giving us the kind of the traders' reaction, the reaction in the markets, and we do have a sell-off in risk assets here. Let's get the latest reporting directly from Israel. We're joined by Dan Williams, Bloomberg reporter in Israel. Dan, an escalation here apparently is about to occur here with Iran potentially targeting Israel. Can you give us the latest that you know on the ground in Israel?
Well, preceding this announcement from the United States that a ballistic missile attack could be imminent from Iran, Israel put out a public notification from its military calling on citizens pretty much throughout the country to avoid assembling in public and to remain close to bomb shelters. So the public in Israel throughout the country is pretty much gripped by anticipation of some kind of escalation. Keep in mind that overnight, Israel sent ground forces on a significant incursion, a ground operation into southern Lebanon. This is a new development in the almost year-long war. So Israelis are pretty much braced on several fronts.
And, Dan, I guess from your reporting and others, this is something that Israel's somewhat used to. I mean, as recently as April of last year.
The time to take out Iran is now.
What's the defense posture of Israel and its allies in the region for a potential attack?
Israel's pretty much on the high state of alert going on a year now since the October 7th attack by Hamas, which triggered this war. As you noted on April 14th, it was really the first test run for the Israeli air defense system with the assistance of foreign partners. Then Iran launched something like 300 projectiles, including ground-to-ground ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, drones, and the like. And the bulk of them were swatted away, shot down, mostly by Israeli air defenses. They had one system called Arrow that's even capable of shooting down a missile in space. The design really there is meant to ensure that a warhead, a non-conventional warhead, should one be used, would be safely dispersed well out of the atmosphere. Israel is ready for this, but obviously there are strains on the public. This has been an exhausting war. It's been obviously exhausting for Palestinians in Gaza and more recently for Lebanese. But the Israelis really are on a war footing now. They see this as the most consequential war since the War of Independence in 1948, the war of Israel's establishment and they're ready to see it through in the hope of changing the reality when it comes to Iran and Iran's militia proxies throughout the region.
And when they knock out Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas, the borders are going to increase in Israel. Trust me on this. And big changes are going to be happening in the West Bank.
Well, there is ground fighting now. I should say, sorry, there's a ground incursion. The Israelis say the forces they sent in overnight to select areas of Lebanon along the border, basically just across the border into Lebanon, have not encountered significant opposition from Hezbollah. There is a sense of perhaps bemusement, perhaps confusion, perhaps suspicion on the part of the Israelis. They do believe that Hezbollah retains several thousand crack troops, called the Red One Force, that is potentially hiding, ready to mount ambushes on the troops, waiting potentially to launch an October 7th style attack on northern Israel. I think the Israelis now are looking to dislodge physically Hezbollah from the southern border, having already decapitated Hezbollah in terms of killing the leadership with a series of precision strikes over the last 2-3 weeks, and significantly degraded the missile, rocket, and drone arsenal of Hezbollah. But basically, this is now pretty much a two-front war when you include Gaza, with several other fronts with low signature fighting, for example, attacks from Yemen, attacks from Syria, attacks from Iraq, and of course, tension and often violence with Palestinians in the West Bank. So Israelis are in a state of a multi-front conflict. The end doesn't appear to be close, but it would appear this war still has public support, given that most Israelis believe they're facing an existential threat and that the struggle has to be seen through.
Dan, outstanding reporting. Thank you very much for your time. That's Dan Williams, Bloomberg reporter, in the car coming from the Israeli-Palestinian territories, heading back to Jerusalem, getting some on-the-ground reporting there, what's happening. Again, the reporting coming out of Bloomberg is that the U.S. says Iran is preparing to attack Israel with ballistic missiles. That is certainly having an impact on the market. S&P 500 off 1%, the NASDAQ off 1.8%. Bonds higher, yields lower, 10-year yield down about 8 basis points, 3.7.
Shit's gonna hit the fan. Let me talk about the anti-aging box, because the stress that you're gonna be incurring soon is gonna age you. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the anti-aging deluxe box. In the anti-aging deluxe box, you get the Max 35, helps to neutralize pathogens and improve your immune system. C60, your choice of C60, 2 ounce, either extra virgin olive oil, MCT coconut oil, or avocado oil. C60 is a very strong antioxidant, soaks up free radicals and improves your mitochondrial health. You get more energy. D3 helps with gene expression. It's a gene expression cofactor, and it helps to get cells to go into apoptosis when they need to. Vitamin C helps to boost up your immune system and helps with your skin. Probiotic helps with digestion, helps with metabolism, and improves overall health. Your choice of deodorant, either in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, or citrus. This deodorant is made from essential oils from the Himalayas. It's for males and females. It's also a product that will help to detoxify your body. Toothpaste. It's a structural nano silver toothpaste. And lastly, in the deluxe box, you get the resveratrol, which gets rid of senescent cells, and it's an antioxidant. Now, in the anti-aging super deluxe box, you get everything I just mentioned, but you also get turmeric, which brings down inflammation, ashwagandha, which helps to control blood glucose levels, helps to bring down cortisol levels, and it will bring down that inflammatory response. Omega-3, which helps with your lipid profile. It'll bring down LDL levels, increase your HDL levels, and it will prevent your red blood cells from sticking. That's a problem, especially in the post-2020 crisis. And vitamin B complex, which helps with vitamin B complex, which helps with cellular metabolism. All right, so please go to my store, get the anti-aging boxes, either the beginner's box, the advanced box, the deluxe box, or the super deluxe box, which I just mentioned. You get a lot of products in the super deluxe box. You get the Max 35, and the C60, the C60, and the D3, and the deodorant, the toothpaste, right? You get vitamin C, and you get probiotic veggie caps, resveratrol, turmeric, ashwagandha, okay? Omega-3, B complex. You get a lot of really important items here. Now, the key to anti-aging is a three-pronged approach. Neutralize pathogens with structural nanosilvers, liquids and gels, bring down inflammation, and take strong antioxidants, soak up free radicals. And when you do that, you slow down the aging process and boost up your immune system. Take my advice or don't take my advice, but what I say works. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
It's 10% on a one-year basis, on just this year basis, that gold is beating the S&P 500.
You mentioned that, so that's the supply side of the equation. On the demand side, so much hinges on China. You mentioned that earlier. What are the commodity markets telling you about just the economy in China?
Severe recessionary trajectory at the moment, man, Paul. And I appreciate you going there. So on a one-year basis, you got gold up 45% and crude oil down 27%. That's not good. And right in between, we have copper. So to me, copper is the next indicator. I think it's going to drop, but that's a severe sign of more. It's normal reversion. Crude oil just got way too expensive, but it's a sign that we're not getting that organic demand. And there's also, we're replacing it with technology. But on a global basis, commodities are, in this point out, a severe recession. And there's one key missing link. To solidify that and kind of legitimize it would be if the U.S. stock market just backed up a little bit and up, let's see, 36% on a one-year basis. If you give back 10% of that, it doesn't mean anything except for those people who are way long and not expecting it.
Yeah, all right. Very good. Mike McGlone, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Mike McGlone, he's the commodity strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence down there in Miami, giving us the latest. We're seeing some big movements in the commodity space, as we are across the broader markets. We'll have continuing coverage of breaking news coming out of the Mideast. Right now, let's go to John Tucker and get a little bit of a reset here at the Bloomberg Business.
Okay, definitely risk off, Paul, in the financial markets as that geopolitical risk boils to the surface this morning. The White House, of course, as we've been telling you, says Iran preparing to attack Israel, expecting what they call an imminent missile attack. And of course, the fear of the escalating conflict sending stocks lower, yields lower, gold higher, as Mike's mentioning, oil higher. Also significant to note, at least from a technical standpoint, the S&P 500 has broken below 5,700, or it did just a moment ago. So that a move below that kind of suggests that we may retest the 50-day moving average, which I believe is at 55.35. So just keep an eye out for that. Right now, the S&P 500 right at 5,700, 61 points lower. The S&P 500 is down 1%. Dow Jones Industrial Average down 263 points. That's a decline of 0.6%. And the Nasdaq 100 down 339 points. That's down 1.7%.
There's a 23% retracement support level on the small Fibonacci for this bull market at about 5,220. All right, that's a support level. Now, so it's trading at 5,700. So you got 5,700, and there's a support level for the S&P 500 at 5,220. Now, he was saying that there's also a support level based on the 50-day moving average at five. I think he said 5,550. But I look at Fib sequences, and there's a major support level at 5,220. There's also a psychological support level at 540. gonna be tumultuous. For sure, for sure.
East Coast, I mean, I was looking at some graphics on various TV networks, and it's pretty much all down the entire East Coast, winding around our friends in Florida and all the way into the Gulf Coast. You start thinking about, that's a lot of territory there. That's a lot of shipping. So you really want to get some perspective on that. You go to the folks on the left side of this country, on the West Coast. They had their labor issues a couple of years ago. Mario Cordero joins, the CEO of the Port of Long Beach. Mario, thanks so much for joining us here. What role do you believe the West Coast ports, your port in Long Beach, can have in maybe relieving some of the pressure on shippers who can't unload or load their goods on the East Coast? How are you guys approaching that?
Oh, thank you for the invitation. I mean, I think when you talk about Long Beach, we're part of the largest container gateway for the nation. So I think the role that we play is a continued role that we move a great percentage of the nation's trade. And I think we're in a very good position to handle whatever surge comes our way. And last, I'll make the point that August, we had a historic number of containers moving through the Port of Long Beach. That number was 913,000 plus containers. That's a historical high number for us, a record number. And when you add the Port of LA for August, we approximated about 1.9 million containers in this gateway, the San Pedro Bay complex. So our role here is to continue to move cargo in an efficient manner. And again, Port of Long Beach has a tremendous capacity right now. In other words, good capacity, about 70%. So we are prepared to continue to move that containerized cargo that comes our way.
I'm curious, what kind of lessons did you end up learning from the pandemic? Because we had so many supply related issues with the change there. And how did that help you try to navigate this instance?
Great question. A lot of lessons learned. Number one, expanding operation hours. I've been a big spokesperson for 24/7 operations. Again, to qualify that or put that in perspective, we're not going to go 24 hours a day, 7 days a week anytime soon, but there's a framework of expansion of hours. So in Long Beach, we've done that. We've done staging areas. And again, this is going to be very beneficial for us if in fact we need to stage containers outside the terminals. And I think the lessons learned from COVID, again, it's a supply chain issue. So the warehouse that is the end product here of the supply chain in this region, they also are very collaborative with us, making sure that inventory moves. So again, a lot of lessons learned from COVID-19 supply chain crisis. So we're applying those lessons, and hopefully, again, as I just noted, we're moving a record amount of cargo here to Port Long Beach without any congestion or bottlenecks whatsoever.
Hey, Mario, if I'm a shipper, I've got to ship at sea in the Atlantic, steaming towards New York or something, and that's closed now. What are the economics for me to say, oh, I'll go to the Panama Canal, go through there, then I'll come up to your port in Long Beach? Is that realistic? Is that a decision option?
Well, I mean, that decision for the shipper is based on economics. So obviously, if they're going to come to the West Coast, I think that decision comes into play that for them, it's a reduced cost with regard to the option that potentially could happen. But in that regard, yes, there's increased transportation costs for sure. But I think, again, it's going to be a scenario in which we'll be able to manage that and move forward as we have in previous instances. We talked about COVID-19. But again, we have a lot of lessons learned from COVID-19. And one of them is we are prepared no matter where the options are in terms of cargo flow. We're going to be moving the cargo here.
What other ports along the West Coast do you foresee field cargo that ends up getting rerouted?
I'm sorry, repeat that question.
So what other ports along the West Coast do you foresee other sort of field cargo end up getting rerouted at this point?
Well, number one, Port of Los Angeles. Again, they're part of this gateway, the Port of Oakland in Northern California, and you also have the Port of Wainimi. So there's other ports in the West Coast here. And again, if you go to the Northwest, Port of Seattle and Tacoma. So I think the West Coast is in a very good position to make sure that we not only receive the cargo, but continue to move it inland to the nation's Midwest.
Mario, one of the topics that I guess the longshoremen and the shippers have is wages, of course, and presumably that'll work itself out. But the other one is automation and what that means for jobs. How do you guys talk to your longshoremen about the need for you guys to automate to remain competitive versus their need to preserve jobs? What's that discussion like these days?
Well, I mean, you mentioned an issue here, automation, robotics has been a continued concern in all sectors of labor. So for Port of Long Beach, I think the way we've been able to navigate well with our labor partners is anyone who's interested in further developing the terminals at the Port of Long Beach, number one, you have to have a meeting of the minds with the IOW. So that collaborative partnership and works well for us. So in that regard, that's been our policy. Anybody who wants to expand or develop their terminals, they have to go through the IOW first. And that mitigates any serious differences as we go down the road. So for us, it's been a successful path. But on the other hand, again, keep in mind, this is an issue across the board in terms of workforce in the nation, if not the global community.
Do you have a sense from retailers how they're potentially making contingency plans as of now?
Well, I think what I can tell you is I gave you these record numbers that we're moving here at the Port of Long Beach. You know, for August, that's almost a 34% increase year to year. So I think the retailers and the shippers have already anticipated a scenario that's occurring at the East Coast, and they've already made that decision to move their cargo to the West Coast. And again, the August numbers for both these ports, Los Angeles and Long Beach here,
Prices are going up.
Are historical numbers. So that basically answers the question that I think they've already made those decisions, and I do expect to have additional cargo. But having said all this, I want to make sure that, again, from the Port of Long Beach, we encourage that the parties in the East Coast move to a resolution, because any bottleneck in the supply chain in the nation is not good. So from my perspective, I think, again, it's not about additional cargo that we're going to get. It's about hopefully these parties come to a mutual resolution soon so that we don't impact the nation's supply chain anywhere in the country.
Hey, Mayor, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate getting some of your time. Mayor Cordero, he's the CEO of the Port of Long Beach, giving us a sense of kind of they're busy.
Right.
And presumably they still have some capacity to take some shipments if somebody wanted to divert them from the East Coast to the West Coast. And the other thing we learned about talking to Gene Soroka, who is his counterpart at the Port of LA, is that those West Coast ports, particularly the ones in the LA area, they just get a great view of China trade.
They do.
Container ships just keep coming back and forth into that port. So you can get a good view.
Right, such a leading indicator of how the economy is performing. I was looking over at how the VIX is doing right now. It actually had briefly spiked above 20. Right now it's just below 19, but it's actually about 30% above its average for the year, which is just below 15. So obviously seeing as we're turning the page and we're in the final quarter of this year, seeing volatility spike on this first trading session of the fourth quarter, Paul.
Yeah, very good. So again, S&P off about 1% here. Let's check in with John Tucker, going to Bloomberg Business Flash, see what's happening in the world as markets are moving.
Okay, definitely risk off, Justin Paul, financial markets as the geopolitical risks kind of boil to the surface with the White House saying Iran preparing to attack Israel. The fear of the escalating conflict sending stocks lower, yields lower, gold higher, oil higher. In the S&P 500, most of the major industry groups are lower. And the best performer, surprisingly, not surprisingly enough, right now is energy, as we have the crude oil, Brent crude oil right now, the international benchmark, that is up 2.7%, 73.66 a barrel. NYMEX crude, the West Texas, that's up close to 3% a barrel. It's 70.17. In the stock markets, S&P 500, right around the 5,700 level. It's important from a tactical perspective. When it breaks below that, we could hit the 50-day moving average. Right now, down 1%, the S&P 500, 59 points lower. Again, 57.02. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, 244 points lower. That is down 0.6%. And the Nasdaq 100 down to 313 points. That's a decline of 1.6%. And the yields, they are tumbling as bond prices are bid up. 2-year yield right now, 4 basis, we'll call it 5 basis points lower right now, 359. The 10-year is down close to 7 basis points. That is at 371. And among the data today, the ISM manufacturing data coming out showing declines in prices paid, new orders, and employment. And we check the markets for you all day long, right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker. That is your...
Okay. Let me do a product advertisement here. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the anti-aging structural nanosilver box. What you get in that box is the Max 35, the probiotic, the structural nanosilver gel, the toothpaste, the structural nanosilver soap, your choice. There's 5 varieties. This one happens to be lemongrass. And lozenges. I have it in Manuka honey in a 21 count and elderberry zinc in a 21 count. So please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the anti-aging structural nanosilver box. If you don't want to buy a anti-aging box, you can buy individual products instead. It's up to you. But please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right. What I want to do is I want to play a little bit of CNBC. See what they're saying here. We're gonna go back and forth.
Like behind me, but that is the sound of our outgoing Israeli artillery fire. They are targeting Hezbollah positions on the other side of that border. We have heard that artillery really ramp up in just the last 40 minutes or so. Now, these U.S. officials are warning that if Iran moves ahead with a direct strike against Israel, that there will be severe consequences for Iran. So, Carl, this is an extremely high-stakes moment in what has been a very long, very bloody 11 months in the Middle East, and we may now be standing on the precipice of all-out war. Guys.
Raf, is there any reason, we've been talking about this with some other guests this morning as well, to think that the efficiency of those missiles might be better than it was in April from the Iranians?
It's a really good question. The Iranians may have learned lessons from that attack back in April when they fired this enormous barrage. Some of those missiles did get through. They hit the runway, at least, of an Israeli air base in the south of this country, but it didn't cause the kind of widespread damage that many expected it might. That combination of American, European jets in the skies across the Middle East, plus Israel's old and vaunted air defense systems, took out the vast majority of those missiles. But we will see if Iran's Revolutionary Guard has learned lessons and if they potentially are able to find a way through those air defenses now in a way that they weren't back in April. Yes.
You referenced the artillery fire from Israel into southern Lebanon. What do we know about the incursions made by Israeli troops at this point? Whether they've encountered any resistance or where things stand?
It's a really key question, Carl. An Israeli official says that the number of troops who crossed the border into southern Lebanon last night was in the low hundreds. Israel is saying these are limited, targeted raids. They are designed to push Hezbollah fighters back from the immediate border and to begin creating the conditions where it would be safe for Israeli civilians to return to their homes. There's an Israeli village called Metula, just a little bit north of us. It's one of the many, many ghost towns now across the Israel-Lebanon border. We spoke to an Israeli military spokesman just about 2 hours ago, and he said at the time of our interview, Israeli forces had not engaged in any firefights on the ground with Hezbollah fighters. We asked them, why is that? If Israel is targeting key assets of Hezbollah, why is Hezbollah not defending them? They say at this point, it appears that Hezbollah has made the decision not to engage in direct confrontations with Israeli forces who have air support behind them, who have superior weapons, superior training, and it looks like they are falling back to some second line of defense further into Lebanon. But the big question, of course, is whether these more limited Israeli raids just over the border are going to be enough to restore confidence here in northern Israel, or if this limited operation is going to turn into something much bigger. Yes.
What are the Israelis being told now? Are they sheltering, bomb shelters?
So at this point, there are restrictions in certain parts of the country, including up here in the north. Those are restrictions on the number of people who can gather in one place. But the Israeli military spokesman says at this point, given that there are no detections of Iranian missiles in the air, they are not extending shelter-in-place warnings to Israelis all across the country. I can tell you the U.S. Embassy in Israel is instructing its employees to shelter in place at this time. That is a reflection of that warning coming from U.S. intelligence. Right now, we have a lot of very concerned people across this country, and they are waiting around their televisions, around their smartphones, to see what comes next, and they're waiting to see if more specific instructions come from the Israeli military. Okay.
Meantime, we have had Putin, for example, weigh in on this rhetoric. We've had some European countries start to talk about evacuating their own citizens from Lebanon. I just wonder, Raf, your sense right now on other parties that might get involved, even rhetorically, and what that might mean for the conflict.
Well, at this point, Carl, we have seen Iran's various proxies all joining in. Hezbollah, obviously the most prominent, Hamas in Gaza, but then the Houthis in Yemen, who have been firing towards central Israel. One of their missiles reaching the greater Tel Aviv area in recent days, Israel carrying out a very long-range airstrike against the Houthis in Yemen in response. And the deep, deep fear here in the region, but also in the White House, is that this spreads to become an all-out regional war. Guys.
Thank you for that reporting. We are obviously keeping a close eye on the markets here as well, and we are seeing weakness, perhaps in part because of the concerns of geopolitical nature. We pointed out oil is up, the NASDAQ is down some 1.7%.
All right. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I have an anti-aging skin health beginner's box and advanced box. So in the beginner's box for the skin health, you get the collagen. You take this every day, you get a big scooper, you mix it with food, you can mix it with water or with milk, it's up to you. And you get a really good amino acid profile from this, okay? What collagen does is that it helps to build up stronger bones, improve your joints and your skin, all right? A lot of people don't realize that collagen is important for your nails, your hair, and your skin. So you can improve your skin health by taking collagen, and it's dual purpose because you're improving your joint health and your bone health. But you need to take vitamin C, and they cross-link when you drink water. So you take filtered water, about 32 to 64 ounces a day throughout the day, right? You drink 32 to 64 ounces throughout the day, filtered water, that's important. And that water will help to cross-link the vitamin C and the collagen to build up the dermal layer to improve the lower, the deeper part of your skin, all right? Then in the beginner's box, you also get the structural nanosilver gel. You put it on your skin daily. The best way is to put it on before you go to bed and then exfoliate in the morning, and you'll notice that your skin's clearer and tighter, especially on your face. It'll be much tighter. So you do that every day. You take the collagen every day. You drink the filtered water every day with the vitamin C. It'll cross-link, improve the dermal layer. This improves the top layer, the topical layer of your skin, and tightens it, okay? So that's the beginner's box. Now in the advanced box, you get everything in the beginner's box, but you also get resveratrol, which helps to get rid of senescent cells. It's an antioxidant, and it helps the mitochondria. So what will happen is that you're improving the basal layer of the lower part of your skin. So you have a basal layer that's creating new skin cells, and they move up to the surface, and as they age and move up towards the surface, they become more keratinized. And so when they become more keratinized, it's harder and it's more of a barrier, all right? And then they flake off, and then your basal layer continues to regenerate. But when we get older, the health of the basal layer goes down, but also the ability to regenerate goes down also. So if you look at people that are in their 70s or 80s, their skin is a little translucent. That's part of the reason. The basal layer isn't performing very well. All right. While you look at someone that's young, and they're regenerating very quickly because their basal layer is very healthy. So you want to keep the health of your basal layer. So the whole key to the healthcare boxes that I have for the skin health boxes, is to improve the topical layer, with the gel to improve the middle layer with the vitamin C and the collagen. And you drink filtered water, all right, 32 ounces or 64 ounces. And that will improve the middle layer. And then you want to improve the basal layer with resveratrol and with C60. And you get your choice of extra virgin olive oil, MCT coconut oil, or avocado oil. C60 is a very strong antioxidant. It'll soak up those free radicals and improve the mitochondrial health in your basal layer. So when your cells are starting to divide again in the basal layer to make new skin cells, they're healthier, right? So it's really important. So in the beginner's box, you get the gel, right? You get the gel, you get the collagen, and you get the vitamin C. In the advanced box, you get everything in the beginner's box, but you also get the resveratrol to help to improve your basal layer and the C60 to help to improve your basal layer. That's really important. So you're hitting all the layers of your skin, and you'll notice that your skin is healthier. Now, it's important to drink that 32 to 64 ounces of filtered water in the process to get that cross-linking with the collagen and the vitamin C. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the anti-aging skin health beginners or advanced box. If you don't want to get the box and you just want to buy some of the individual products within the box, you can do that also. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. All right, what's going on? Let's go to Al Jazeera for a second.
Presidential election. There are fears of imminent escalation in the Middle East. A senior U.S. official has warned that Iran is preparing a ballistic missile attack on Israel. The U.S. Embassy in Israel has ordered employees and their families to shelter in place until further notice. The warning comes as Israeli forces have struck a building in the Lebanese capital, Beirut. Overnight, attacks on the southern suburb of Beirut destroyed several residential buildings. Hezbollah says it launched missiles towards military outposts near Tel Aviv, which the Israeli military says were intercepted. And earlier, Israel said its troops crossed into southern Lebanon for what it was calling limited and targeted raids against the group. A Hezbollah spokesman denied the reports, but did say that the group is ready to confront Israeli forces. If true, it would be the first time Israel has had boots on the ground in Lebanon since the war in 2006. Al Jazeera's Dorsa Jabari joins us from the Lebanese capital. What's happening in Beirut, Dorsa?
Well, sir, we're at the scene of one of the latest attacks that's been carried out by Israel. I'm just going to get out of the shot so my cameraman Ali can show you what is happening behind me. This appears to be yet another targeted assassination or attempted assassination. This was a strike on a residential building. It appears they hit a certain floor that they were aiming for, and the ones above and below it were just collateral damage. Now, we've been told by people at the scene that this happened just about an hour or so ago. And as you can see, the emergency personnel are still working through the rubble and trying to dig out what they can. And we have not seen a body come out as of yet, but that is what we are expecting. This building is located next to one of the main hospitals in this area of Beirut. It's called Zahra Hospital, and it's quite a large hospital facility. This building is also located a few kilometers away from the second airstrike that took place just before this one. And that building near us is also, we believe to be, according to Israel, a targeted assassination. What they say is targeted assassination, but clearly these buildings are residential buildings that they're hitting. The second location, away from where we are at the moment, is also close to the Kuwait embassy And also, we understand to the main highway that links the airport to the city. So you understand the geography of where we are at the moment, and Dahlia is just beyond these buildings, further out. So we're at one of the entrance points of the area surrounding the southern suburb of Beirut that has seen unprecedented amount of attacks. And of course, there was at least 8 airstrikes on Dahlia overnight that we saw, and those airstrikes were heard by people across the capital. This is the latest in a series of airstrikes that Israel is carrying out, clearly intensifying and extending the broad scale of its attacks across the Lebanese capital and across Lebanon.
So that is the scene. It's 1500 GMT. That is the scene in the Lebanese capital, Beirut. Al Jazeera's Dorsa Jabari is at the foot of that building in the immediate aftermath of an Israeli strike there. Dorsa, thank you very much for your reporting. We'll go now to our White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett, who's joining us from Washington, D.C. So, Kimberly, we were saying at the top of the show, a senior U.S. official has warned that Iran is preparing a ballistic missile attack on Israel. That's what we have so far. Tell us everything you know about this.
Yeah, well, according to that official, the U.S. has received indications through its intelligence that Iran is prepping for a ballistic missile attack against Israel. Now, what we've learned is that in response to that, Israel is in turn prepping for defensive measures in order to defend itself against what it believes is an imminent attack by Iran. Now, the statement goes on to say that a direct military attack from Iran against Israel will carry severe consequences for Iran. What would that look like? Well, we've learned that it would look very similar to what we saw last April, and that is when Iran launched roughly 300 ballistic missiles and drones. All of them were intercepted either by Israel or by the Allied forces in support of Israel. That included the United States. Now, we know, according to the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, that the United States is tracking very closely all of the developments that are going on in the Middle East, coordinating with Israel. So this is being followed very closely. But again, what I can tell you is that there is this belief on the part of the United States, as recently as in the last few days, that despite the claims that are being made by Iran, that there is this feeling that there is not a desire by Iran to have a direct confrontation. In fact, National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said that they don't believe that Iran wants a direct fight. In fact, what they're saying is, given the bolstered force posture of the United States in the region, one that we should point out has been sort of amped up in the last few days by a few thousand, now increasing to about 43,000 in the region, that Iran should think twice about any sort of either direct attacks or proxy attacks, given the force posture. And in fact, the U.S. believes that this may even be a deterrent.
Okay, Kimberly, I just want to ask you again, because this has the potential to be so important. How do we know this, right? Who's saying this?
Rosh Hashanah is tomorrow in the morning. Rosh Hashanah is tomorrow in the evening, it starts, but in the morning, the next day, the shofar is blown. A major blessing is going to go on to the Jewish people in the soul root of Jacob. That means the individuals and the nations that have an affinity to the soul root of Jacob, which includes the United States. All right. That means that Esau is going to have no blessing at that moment in time. Now, Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas represents Esau. Negative. Right now, the soul roots are together, positive and negative for Esau, but they're starting to split. And the negative part of Esau is this Iranian theocracy, Hezbollah, and Hamas. They're not going to be blessed. And that happens on October 3rd in the morning. All right? Iran's theocracy knows this. They know that metaphysically there's a switch that's taking place. Now, in the year, right now, August, September, October, August, September, October, November, December, January are the months that are powerful for Esau and weak for Jacob. But when you blow the shofar, it shuts down that system during the holiday and allows for a blessing to come down for the year. All right. But if you're not prepared to receive that blessing, you're going to get cursed. So these pacifists that are in the United States, you're not going to get that blessing when that comes down. So, but in a normal year, what happens is that Jacob is weak within these months all the way through January, and then in February, March, April, May, June, July, those are the months that Jacob is very strong. Now, with this blessing that's coming down on August 3rd, all right, there's going to be extreme power in Jacob in April. Now, remember what I said, 34 weeks from September 24th, 2024 will get you to the week of May 20th, 2025. So there's a blessing that comes down on October 3rd of this year to the soul root of Jacob. Then what happens is that window closes. All right, it's already set in stone what the year is going to be for blessing and curse. And you miss the boat if you're a pacifist. All right, and you're part of the soul root of Jacob. All right, then what happens is that there's going to be strife between Jacob and Esau for the year, for these months, right? All the way through January will be relatively strong, but somewhat weakened because of this blessing that's coming down because of the blowing of the shofar. All right. But right when February happens, Jacob's energy level radically changes and Esau's energy level will go down. All right. The week of May 20th, 34 weeks from September 24th, 2024, which I explained why this is important already earlier in the video. That's in the soul root of the power for Jacob. Something big is going to happen. All right. I can't tell you exactly what, but I'm telling you, there's something big that's going to happen. Now, I keep on thinking that it's tied to Asia, but it may be events that are happening in the Middle East that leads to Asia, or events that happen to Asia that leads to that cause some sort of perturbation in the Middle East. I'm not sure, but I feel it's global, and it's going to happen when the soul root of Jacob is strong. Now, the soul root of Jacob is its strongest in April, not in May, but it's still strong in May. So now you hear like, well, what's going on? What's the threat, and why is Iran worried and all this? Because they know that the blessing is coming down in the morning of October 3rd for Jacob, and it's not going to be for Esau. They know this.
And I know no evidence has been provided, but why? What information are they providing that makes this sound credible?
Any day now, honey.
Okay. Hey, Kimberly, can you still hear me? This is Cyril in Doha. All right, it looks like Kimberly Alkett has lost us. We'll go back to her a little later. Let's bring in Hamda Salhout in Jordan's capital, Amman, because the Israeli government has banned Al Jazeera from reporting within Israel. Hamda, just so you know what we're watching,
500 down
as
70
we're speaking, we have in the center of our screen the live shot of Beirut, or the southern, close to Dahieh, the southern suburb of Beirut. It's the seat of a building that has just recently been struck by Israel. We're also watching the Beirut cityscape, where we've seen so many strikes over the last few days from Israel over various targets. Let's go to what you have. Do you know anything about what we were discussing with Kimberly? This information that is being shared by a U.S. official that Iran could be preparing to attack Israel with a ballistic missile.
Well, there are certainly preparations being made in Israel. The Israeli Army spokesperson Daniel Hagari said that the Israelis received the message from American counterparts, but that they didn't really detect any sort of aerial threats or preparations from the Iranians just yet, based on their own intelligence. But Daniel Hagari did go on to say that if Iran were to attack Israel similarly,
oil just broke $71 a barrel. Your prices are going to go up.
Prepared with their air defenses, and that there will be consequences for this. But at the same time, the Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant is currently meeting with the Army Chief of Staff, and according to reports within Israeli media, they're discussing this threat. They're discussing how to combat it. They're discussing other sort of measures to put in place, because there have been new home front command guidelines that have been issued by the Israeli military and the government, putting restrictions on gatherings. Embassy staff at the U.S. embassies at least have been ordered to shelter in place, and politicians are speaking about unity at a time like this of a conflict that is spreading wider and wider.
Hamda, what has the Israeli military been saying about what it's doing in Lebanon at the moment?
Well, the Israeli army has said they're conducting what they call small and targeted raids, but make no mistake, it's still a full invasion into sovereign Lebanese territory. They say they have specific goals in mind. They want to destroy Hezbollah, destroy all of its military infrastructure, and that they want to return those evacuated residents to those towns and settlements along Israel's northern border. They've also been saying for weeks that they have a lot of tools in their arsenal that they haven't yet unleashed on Hezbollah, and a ground invasion was one of them. They say that it's not going to be so long. They're not going to push very deep into Lebanese territory. But of course, there hasn't really been any reports of face-to-face combat just yet. And it's still unknown exactly what the Israelis are going to be up against, because this is a different beast. This is not Gaza. This is not the occupied West Bank. This is Hezbollah in Lebanon. So there are concerns among the Israeli security sphere about what's to come next, but Israel says that it's important to invade on the ground in order to push Hezbollah away from the border.
Hamda Salhout reporting from Amman, Jordan. Thank you very much for that. Imran Khan is in Hasbaya, southern Lebanon. So you're in the border communities, the frontline communities, one might say, really. Roughly, how far are you from the Israeli border, Imran, and what have you seen today?
Well, we're about 8 kilometers away from the Israeli border, but let me just take you through what happened in the last 24 hours. We started hearing and seeing intense airstrikes and artillery around about 7 p.m. Last night. That got more and more and more intense, and we realized that something was up. And then the reports started coming out that the Israelis were preparing a ground invasion. Hezbollah started to fire back. They were launching rockets where we were in Ilasaki, in the Marjayoun district, and it was very, very intense firing. At that stage, there were all sorts of rumors flying around that the Israeli army had given an evacuation order to that particular village and the hotel that myself and all my journalist colleagues were staying at. It was dark, so we didn't move. But throughout the night, all of that kept going. And then he had that statement from the Israeli army saying a ground offensive had started. Well, we didn't see any evidence of it. Now, in the morning, we actually had to leave Ibelsaki, where our hotel was, because there was an evacuation order given by the Israeli army, an evacuation for 26 different villages and towns. One of the roads we went through had been struck by the Israelis. There was a huge convoy of just seriously frightened people who wanted to leave that area, thinking and hoping that their homes might be spared by anything that might be coming. They were very scared, but they were also scared about where they were going to go. They didn't think that Beirut was going to be safe, and Tyre and the other places they might go to. The Lebanese army then leveled that road. They made makeshift repairs, and then about 6 hours ago, the Israeli army attacked it again. And basically, they've cut off that vital lifeline. They've told people to leave, they've told people to evacuate, and then one of the roads out, they've simply bombed, causing a bottleneck.
So that is exactly what I wanted to double check with you. We're talking about parts of southern Lebanon where Israel has told residents to leave. You've told us there's one road out. This is the way to leave, and Israel bombs the road such that they can't leave. Do I get this right?
They bombed it twice. You got it completely right.
I heard in one of your earlier reports that among the residents that you've spoken to, they keep referring to Gaza. Why?
When you have safe areas or allegedly safe areas you can go to in normal times, when the escalation was happening last week, it was felt that Beirut was a place you could go to. The Tyre government was a place you could go to. When it intensified after the pager and the walkie-talkie attacks of last week now, 2 weeks ago now, in fact, people were very, very frightened because they thought that this was a terrorist attack against civilians. That's what they called it, a terror attack. And then this absolute escalation. And then they're seeing Beirut burning.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Why? Because the world is burning and you won't be able to sleep. So please go to my store and get the Good Night Formula. This will allow you to get into 3 cycles of REM sleep. So you can, have nice dreams, right? And have a well-rested body when you wake up in the morning. You're consolidating your memory and you're detoxifying your body. You need 3 cycles of REM sleep to be able to detoxify your body, to be well rested, and to consolidate memory. Sleep deprivation chronically will lead or could lead to early onset of dementia. All right, so please, it's really important to slow down the aging process and to protect your neurons by making sure you get enough sleep. You should be getting about 8 hours a day. All right, people that are older, they don't sleep as much, and it's important that you get good sleep. A lot of people are stressed out. Their cortisol levels are too high. Their blood pressure is too high. They have too high of a glucose level. I've told you to take ashwagandha to help control that, but also take Good Night Formula every day so you're well rested. It has tryptophan and melatonin in it. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the good sleep that you need so you detoxify your body, consolidate memory, be well rested, and protect your neural health. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Good Night Formula. We're going to be going through tumultuous times, but this is the reason why you're here, so I can navigate you through this bullshit. All right? But, the people that think that, let's be a pacifist, no, you're going to be cursed when that happens. Trust me, metaphysically, you will be cursed. Please go to my store and get the olive leaf extract. This is a dual purpose product. This will boost up your immune system and your cardiovascular system. How? It'll bring down inflammation. And by bringing down inflammation, your immune system will perform better. And, by the way, it will help to prevent the buildup of plaque because it's through inflammation. It's the very first cascade is the inflammation of the intima of your vascular system that starts that whole cascade of building up plaque. You don't want to do that. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the olive leaf extract to boost up your immune system and your cardiovascular system. It's a great way to supplement and get healthy. It's a dual purpose product. Take it every day. NAD+, very important to boost up your energy levels and to help heal your DNA damage. We have mechanisms in our cells to help to repair DNA damage. But when we get older, it's harder to repair because there's too many areas of damage. We need to take supplements to help the repair mechanism. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take the NAD+. It'll help to boost up your energy levels. It'll help to repair your DNA, and it will help to protect your neurons. So this is it'll help to improve your neural health. All right. As we get older, our neurons start to have problems. You want to mitigate that. Take NAD+ every day. Very important as an anti-aging protocol and to maintain neural health and DNA health. Vitamin K2, MK7, dual purpose product, helps to maintain and improve your bone density and your joint health, but it also will help with your cardiovascular health. Follow my protocol. This is synergistic with D3 to improve your cardiovascular health and your bone health. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. NAC, really important to take every day. Why? Because you need glutathione. And when you get older, you don't make as much glutathione. So you need to take a supplement to help make the glutathione. Glutathione is a strong antioxidant. It's synergistic with C60. It'll soak up free radicals. It'll slow down the aging process, and your cells will have less stress. In addition, this helps to detoxify your liver and your kidney. And this will help with anxiety and people that have attention problems. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and take NAC. This is important. You should take this every day. Many anti-aging gurus and longevity experts take this as a supplement with a lot of other stuff like I do, so please go to my store, follow what I'm doing. I take NAC every day, boost up those glutathione levels and soak up those free radicals, slow down the aging process, and improve your immune system.
Time seen Israeli strike live on Dahye, there in its southern suburb. Rob, back to the subject at hand. Iran also exercises what commentators have named strategic patience. In other words, they don't want a full-out war with Israel. Would it be in their interest to launch a ballistic missile at Israel?
No.
Well, I think at this stage, in terms of their deterrence, they are almost left with no choice. Unless there's a ceasefire, Iran felt like it's backed into a corner, like it has to do something. There's been all sorts of chatter in social media in the Arab world saying, look, Hezbollah intervened in the Syrian civil war in support of Assad. They really got their hands dirty, and the Syrian regime are not throwing them a bone, basically just leaving them to it. And there was also a feeling that Iran was doing the same, that Iran was content to let Lebanon burn, basically. I don't think that is the case. As I say, I think Iran is trying to wait this one out. They're trying to encourage Hezbollah to wait this one out, but there's only so long your deterrence can be degraded. The whole point of deterrence is to show the enemy, if you hurt me, I can hurt you back. And at this stage, it just wasn't looking like Iran could actually hurt Israel. It wasn't looking like Hezbollah could hurt Israel. So once you push someone so much into a corner, they're eventually going to respond, even if they don't want to.
What lesson did we actually learn from April when Iran attacked Israel directly, sending several hundred missiles, rockets, I believe drones as well, at Israel, almost all of which were intercepted by the US and by Israel, of course, and by other countries, which helped protect Israel in that event. The reporting that came out in the days that followed that attack, after the initial sort of shock and awe, like, oh, this has happened, this is a first. The reporting that came out, all of it suggested Israel and the US pretty much knew what was coming. And there was a bit of a fear about that attack, to make it look one way, like this massive, large-scale attack from Iran against Israel, but really, to also make sure that Israel and the US would be able to intercept everything and it wouldn't push the region into war?
Yeah, I don't buy the line that Iran didn't think any of those drones and missiles were going to get through. You know, we're talking about hundreds of missiles fired for the first time, a direct attack against Israel from Iran. I think what surprised Iran was the coalition that Israel had managed to assemble and call upon, for example, the British, the Royal Air Force, the US Air Force, to help shoot down many of those drones and missiles. The question is, will Israel still be able to rely on that? And I think that's very much an open question. Yes, the US is saying in public, we support Israel, we will make Iran pay for any escalation. But in private, the US is getting increasingly frustrated with Israel. It feels like they keep telling the Israelis to do one thing and the Israelis do another. So the question is, how long can we carry on with those policies? How long can Israel keep standing up to the US and saying, we're not going to do what we want, but we also expect you to defend us? That's the open question right now.
Okay, Robert Geist-Pinfold, thank you so much. We'll speak to you again. You're a lecturer in peace and security at Durham University. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Israel's escalation in Lebanon has caused international condemnation. British Foreign Secretary David Lammy says that nobody wants to return to the years in which Israel found itself bogged down in a quagmire in Lebanon. He added that the price of a regional war in the Middle East would be, quote, huge. Spain's Foreign Minister, Jose Manuel Alvarez, says Israel's ground incursion should be halted to reach a ceasefire in Lebanon and Gaza.
Remember what I said? The Ribby said, don't care about what the international community has to say because all they are is full of talk. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and I have anti-Fauci boxes. You get the Max 35 in an anti-Fauci box. You also get magnesium and zinc to boost up your immune system. You have ashwagandha to help control your cortisol levels and your blood glucose levels and help to bring down inflammation. You get D3 to help get rid of cells that need to go into apoptosis. And turmeric to bring down inflammation, and it's an antioxidant. So that's the anti-Fauci box. The anti-Fauci advanced box, you also get C60, your choice of extra virgin olive oil, MCT coconut oil, or avocado oil. You take a teaspoon a day. This is a very strong antioxidant. It soaks up free radicals and boosts up your mitochondrial health so you have more ATP. That's the anti-Fauci advanced box. Now, the anti-Fauci deluxe box, you get digestive enzyme complex. Helps to break down carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. But not just that, it has enzymes to break up glycoproteins. And we know all about protein, glycoproteins, right? And you also get enzymes that'll break up clots. I have enzymes in here like bromelain that is fibrinolytic. So it's really important to take digestive enzymes. That's why it's in the anti-Fauci box. Omega-3 brings down your LDL levels, increases your HDL levels, improves your cardiovascular fitness. Not just that, for your cardiovascular health. Not just that, omega-3 prevents red blood cells from sticking. Really important during clotting issues. Lignans. It's an antioxidant and also brings down inflammation. This is very important to boost up your immune system. That's really important in the post-2020 aftershock. You know, you need a strong immune system to be able to fight pathogens. You need a strong immune system to fight cancers. Now, do you understand why lignans is an anti-Fauci deluxe box? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the anti-Fauci beginners box, the anti-Fauci advanced box, or the anti-Fauci deluxe box. Now, you don't have to buy an anti-Fauci box to get these great products. You can buy them individually. You can buy lignans individually or digestive enzymes individually at my store. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Follow my advice. Take the stuff that I take to boost up your immune system, slow down the aging process, and get healthy.
They were, I would say, drunk in euphoria of the security success, the intelligence success in Lebanon, from the walkie-talkie and the pages, the beeper operation, up to now and the ground invasion into South Lebanon without an exit. Even there's no discussion in Israeli public. What is the exit door? What is the plan for the day after in Lebanon? So the euphoria let those who are interested to seize the movement and raise the option to attack the Iranian nuclear project.
Is there appetite for that in Israel at the moment?
I doubt if it is if the public is ready. I'm not sure. Perhaps the public is divided. There are no public opinion polls on this. Today it's too early to get a reliable public opinion numbers. But this was in the air. The euphoria was there since the bitter operation. And the euphoria is like the one that Israel had after its huge success in '67 war. But
it is not a problem to have jubilation and quote euphoria with a battlefield success. But as long as the Jewish people, especially the IDF and the military brass, Netanyahu, focuses, moves forward, don't be fearful, don't pay attention to the international community, get the job done, and attribute the success to God and not to be hubris. Israel will be blessed and will be victorious against Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. Now, the game plan is basically this: Hamas, Hezbollah, and the theocratic apparatus of Iran and its nuclear capability completely destroyed. Now, how long that takes, I don't know. But if you don't pay attention to the international community, it'll get done quicker and less casualties, and it'll cost less. Because if you kick the can down the road, it'll cost more and more people will die. And Iran might get a nuclear weapon in the process. That can't happen. Don't be hubris and stay the course. And then what will happen is that this region will start to have peace, but the border system is good for Israel is going to get larger in the process. But there's going to be, even though it seems at the surface that that there's countries that are surrounding Israel that are losing territory, the reality is that they're going to be better off in the long run because that whole region is going to be prosperous and it'll have a blessing. And there's this great alignment between Jacob and Ishmael. I'm not wrong. Now, you can think whatever you want, but I'm not wrong.
Now everything is turned upside down with a Hagari IDF information about the.
It seems upside down because you use the lens of typical Westphalian logic. It seems upside down because you're not learning from the mistakes of the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s, the 1990s, the 2000s, the 2010s, and the 2020s. What is happening right now is saying we're not going to make the same mistake. Now, as long as Netanyahu and the military keeps on this tact, they'll be successful. They will be a blessing. But if the international community comes in and tries to do a ceasefire, there's going to be a major curse. And it's going to get worse in the world. This has to happen for world peace. Why leave the cancer in? You really think that Hezbollah deserves to live? I don't think so. You really think that the theocracy of Iran reaching a nuclear capability deserves it? No, I don't think so. I don't think that's going to add peace to the region. You really think that Hamas deserves to be around? No, I don't think so. For Palestinians to have peace and prosperity, these factions, Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran, need to be destroyed.
Preparation to invade into the Upper Galilee, into Israel. I don't know. I have many questions about Hagari's declaration.
Yeah, we were asking the same questions.
Yeah, but anyhow, this creates a public opinion, a public mood. It creates a public mood of emergency, of existential threat that may push the decision makers and back the decision makers in order to expand the war in Lebanon beyond the limited what Israel.
He's right about that.
The United States.
He's right about that, because the expanded war is going to increase the borders back to biblical times, back to the biblical borders they're set in the Bible. All right. Now, why do we think that through Westphalian logic that mankind should chip away at the actual birthright of Israel for Israel? Why? It was stated in the Bible that this is what is supposed to happen. But the UN thinks something different? So the UN supersedes God? Is that what it is? But then you got a bunch of atheists that may say, well, you know what, there isn't this thing called, God or anything like that. And I understand that, you can use logic, you can use rationale and find a religious path, and you can use rationale and find a non-religious path. But if we're going to take the assumption, which most people do in the world, that the Bible is holy, the Torah is holy, and the Jews believe that, the Christians believe that, the Muslims believe it. And we take that book, and it's holy. The boundaries that are written in the Old Testament, in the Torah, all right, are very clear. And this is what the boundaries are for Israel. Those boundaries are coming back. Independent what other nations think. This is part of the reason why the Rebbe was saying the blessing comes down when you don't listen to the Westphalian bullshit. He didn't say it that way. DrPaulCottrell says it that way. But basically, don't pay attention to the international community because they don't want what's in the Bible. Why? Because it's through the entanglement of the UN and the strife and that conflict within the UN, where Satan can still latch onto an energy force. But when you ignore the UN and allow Israel to reach to what was written in the Bible, then what happens is that the split of Esau, positive and negative, happens, and Satan is weakening and dying. But you'll have people like this that seem intellectual, seem to have, some, that their heart is in the right spot. But Satan is a tricky character. And he needs that energy force from negative Esau. The stronger Esau is, the stronger Satan is. The weaker Esau is, the weaker Satan is. And by killing Hezbollah, Hamas, and the theocracy within Iran, you're killing off Esau negative. And when you do that, you're killing off Satan. And that's why you hear a lot of people saying ceasefire. That's the metaphysics of this. Ceasefire means, metaphysically, keep Satan alive.
And also against Iran. I don't know, and this is very interesting question. if the Americans put brakes on Israel and restrain any Israeli retaliation attack on Iran if Iran hits tonight Israel.
Do Israelis know what the political and military leadership actually want to do in Lebanon? I mean, it doesn't sound to me like there's been a precise plan presented to the Israelis. We know what their end goal is officially, which is to return Israeli residents, about 60,000 people, to their homes in the north. But has the Israeli political or military leadership has said, this is what we're going to do, those are going to be the indicators of success, and this is where it ends?
If I don't think that they have a clear answer, but if I take, for instance, the security measures done in Gaza, okay, and other security plans for a peace settlement with the Palestinians in the West Bank, keeping IDF soldiers in a security strip inside Lebanon could be part of the day after plan of thinking. It's not if there is a plan, but thinking definitely. This is a method, operational method that Israel uses now in Gaza.
If Israel follows what the Rebbe says and ignore the international community, move forward and don't be hubris, there's going to be more land for Israel in the north that's to the biblical borders, and Hezbollah will be eliminated. That's what's going to happen. The question is does Israel have the fortitude? We don't know yet. We'll find out. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the zeolite. This helps to detoxify heavy metals, chemicals, and toxins out of your system. You can take this every day. You can take a couple of drops each day throughout the whole year. Some people will detoxify their body maybe once or twice by taking a few drops underneath their tongue. You drink it with filtered water, and you just use up the bottle, once or twice a year, and you're detoxifying your body that way. This is a molecule. Zeolite is a molecule that's negative. It'll attach to positively charged toxins and chemicals and heavy metals and allow you to urinate it out after about 6 to 8 hours. So it's a great way to detoxify your body and get those forever chemicals out of your body. But you also need to drink filtered water and reduce your intake of these toxins by not eating processed foods. Be careful where you eat and what you eat, and improve your health that way. These toxins affect your endocrine system and affect your immune system. All right. By detoxifying them out of your body, your endocrine system and your immune system will be healthier. And you'll notice over time that that these chemicals are out of your body, and therefore you're reaching homeostasis and getting healthier. So it's really important to take zeolite and detoxify your body. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and take zeolite. If you're on medication, please talk to your doctor first before you take zeolite, because zeolite might bring down the dosage, your serum concentrations of your medication, and the doctor might have to boost up your medication dosage if you're taking zeolite. All right, so please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get those frickin' toxins out of your body, because it's affecting your endocrine system and your immune system. And when your immune system and endocrine system are affected, diseases might happen. Please go to my store and get ubiquinol. I take ubiquinol every day. I've been taking ubiquinol for many years. All right. It boosts up your energy levels. It's a great antioxidant, and it helps for neural health. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take ubiquinol every day. It's the active form for CoQ10. Really important to take this. And it's synergistic with many things like C60. Lastly, Myotrol. Myotrol will help to build muscle and to mitigate muscle loss. All right. When we get older, it's harder to gain muscle, and we don't have energy, and it's hard to maintain muscle mass. All right. Take Myotrol every day to be able to build up muscle and to improve your mitochondrial health, so your energy levels will go up. All right, so please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, improve your mitochondrial health and build muscle mass and maintain your skeletal muscle structure. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get Cottrell. It's a great product to help build and maintain muscle. That's my broadcast for today. Thank you for watching. Please ask your social media followers to follow me so I can go over, with them finance and international affairs and how to improve your health. Thank you for listening and have a nice day. And oh, by the way, I'm pretty sure Israel's going to win.